Gordy and Earl took the lead vocals while Will and I provided the backing. Occasionally, we would bring in the Pointless Sisters, a fun group of girls who hung out with us just for the enjoyment. We were all young and exploring life, love, and relationships. We were fortunate to have a place where we could hang out. With Earl being 21, we could get drinks, as well as other fun things if we wanted. I knew a guy who could help us out. We experimented a little, but never too much to cause problems. If I felt we were getting too deep into things, I would say my brother needed some time away. Then he got caught and went to jail for a while, and what I said turned into reality. The building was large. The back part was meant for living, which was common when it was built. We made a small stage with materials I found at my construction job. We also asked my uncle for some used couches, and he gave us the best he had. There were some he was supposed to throw away, so we had plenty of comfortable seats. Some even turned into beds. We often spent weekend nights there. We weren't foolish. When we practiced, we focused. Sure, we might have a beer or two, but it was usually a weeknight, and we all had jobs. The parties happened on weekends when we didn't have a gig. We would play a couple of songs, then celebrate. Jerry was our newest member, handling our sound and lights. He usually brought a friendly girl with him on weekends, but not during the week. Earl and I were the serious musicians in the group. Sometimes we showed up and were the only two there. We took that time to improve our sound. Earl played bass and was also a good guitarist. I took the lead guitar parts and he handled the rhythm. Sometimes we played acoustic, and other times we turned up the amps loud. That's what we were doing one night when Jerry's friend Bonnie came in with her sister looking for him. They sat on one of the couches, listening and smiling. Her sister, who went by Jules, had played in an all-girls band, and to our surprise, she sat down behind the drums. We played songs by Zeppelin, Cream, and Mountain, anything we could think of. Earl liked older music more than what was popular at the time. He sang a great version of Mississippi Queen, one of the best I had ever heard. We were having a good time until Gordy showed up, 2 hours late. He started yelling about the girl using his drum set, even though she hadn't touched anything. Things got tense when he tried to push her, and I caught his hand. "Try that stuff on me. At least she was here and we had a drummer to practice with." He was clearly upset about something. "Forget you. If you want her, keep her. I'm out." He stomped out, throwing things around. I followed him outside to make sure he didn't damage anything and waited while he sped away. I turned back with a smile. "Well, Jules, how about you join us again?" she agreed. Having a girl drummer who could sing helped us gain fans fast. Soon we were playing every weekend. Jerry asked Bonnie to help with the sound, so she was always around. I started feeling tired of playing every weekend while others had fun, so we decided to take 2 weekends off to just relax. We had all lost our girlfriends because they wanted to go out and have fun like everyone else. Jules took her breakup hard and we grew closer. Nowadays, people might call it friends with benefits, but back then we didn't have a name for it. We had gone to the local lake a few times, and I can say that both Jules and Bonnie looked great in their swimwear. Bonnie was a bit shorter but had a bigger chest, which stood out on her small frame. We were splashing around in the water and having a lot of fun when Jerry, who was a bit jealous, made a scene. Bonnie was on my shoulders, and our friend Jean had Jules on his. We were playfully trying to knock each other off. Jules got a bit too enthusiastic and accidentally pulled down Bonnie's top. Everyone saw it except me, since I was under her. She squealed and fell backward, pulling me along. I thought I might go under, but I came up beside her as she stood in the water, laughing and trying to fix her top while Jules teased her. Suddenly, Jerry appeared and started yelling at her. He had clearly been drinking. "You can't go around acting like that. This is embarrassing. I should really teach you a lesson," he shouted. Before she could react, he grabbed her top and yanked it away, laughing as he headed towards the shore. "I'll wait here with my friends until you come out." I didn't think about it. I just jumped in and grabbed him by the hair, pushing him down into the water. Jules and Bonnie were screaming, as were some other girls nearby. I focused on getting her top, which had floated to the surface. I grabbed it, tossed it to Jules, surfaced Jerry, and pushed him away. He flung himself back to the shore while everyone stared at me. I was young and strong from working hard jobs, and I was really angry. Nobody said a word as I checked on the girls. Jules took Bonnie home. The happy mood was gone. I walked past Jerry and his friends, who shot me nasty looks but didn't say anything. Later, Jules came back to thank me for standing up for Bonnie. She showed her appreciation more than once. We ended up falling asleep on the fold-out couch. Earl had a girlfriend we nicknamed Cherry. We shortened it from Cherry Picker. She was the oldest in our group at 24, and she had tattoos, which was not very common in the late 70s. She had been part of a motorcycle group until they told her she was too old and let her go. I'm still not sure how she ended up with Earl. We called her that nickname because we were a younger crowd. If she even thought a guy was inexperienced, she would chase after him before he knew what was happening, almost like it was her mission. The guys noticed pretty quickly that they acted shy around her, but she would end up having fun with them before the night was over. Earl found it funny. They had an unusual understanding. Now and then, he would go off with someone he met while performing, and she would flirt with someone who had a bit too much to drink. Cherry was the one who suggested a new idea to Earl. They discussed it, and he waited until we were a bit relaxed before bringing it up. "Do you know what a Mazzola party is?" We had no idea, so he explained. "Well, you get a group of people together, lay down some cushions and cover them with plastic. Then you pour out a few bottles of Mazzola and have fun sliding around. If you bump into someone who wants to join in, you enjoy yourselves before moving on to someone else." Wow, he was talking about group fun. We didn't have the internet back then, but we had some magazines and movies that gave us a basic understanding of it. At that moment, we were feeling a bit carefree, so we didn't dive deep into it, but the idea stayed with me. I talked to Jules one night after we had a really good time together, and she was eager to share what she had learned from a previous partner. Back then, women didn't groom as much, but she had a neat trim, so it was pretty tidy. She taught me what she liked, how to be gentle or playful. By the third time, she was really enjoying it, so I knew I was doing it right. She relaxed, catching her breath, and then said, "Wow, if you've been practicing with someone else, let me know. I'd like to thank her." I approached it like playing a game, following a basic idea but changing things up when I could. I kept exploring, and she was really into it. It was quite the experience, and I made a note to remember what worked well for her. We stayed there until she felt ready again, and then she returned the favor. It was intense, and afterwards we relaxed together. So, have you thought about what Earl mentioned? I definitely had. The thought of meeting and having fun with new people excited me. At 18, I was full of energy and curiosity. I wasn't in a serious relationship besides Jewel, and we both enjoyed exploring with others when it came up. I have, haven't you? Yeah. I talked to Annette, and she is interested too. We don't need to involve Cherry. She's open to everyone. Jerry might join us if he finds a girl and if you let him. He's still upset because you replaced him. Rhonda and Vicky would likely come too if you asked them. They were just a couple of girls who spent time with us. Kind of like fans, I suppose. So we made some plans. I asked my uncle for old carpet padding he didn't need, and gathered some sturdy plastic from a nearby construction site. It was quite slippery, and I was curious if anyone would be able to keep their balance once we added oil. We ended up with a platform that was a foot high and 20 feet wide. Earl and I made some grooves on the sides to catch the oil. On the night of the get-together, the girls arrived with extra clothes, thinking ahead. I managed to get a big shower that someone had thrown out because it had a small crack. After fixing it, I also installed a toilet in the back room. We found an old water heater that was still working. It was useful when we had to clean up after a long night before work on Monday. I kept my nice towels locked away because everyone else tended to use them, leaving me with the rough ones they brought. I seemed to be the only one who knew how to use a washing machine, so I washed my towels and left the others until they were nearly unusable. They just tossed theirs and bought new ones. We stood around a bit unsure of what to do until I pulled out some marijuana. After a few joints, we started playing silly games where the goal was to get everyone to loosen up and have fun quickly. Before long, we were giggling and feeling carefree. I was familiar with Jules, so I looked at the others. Vicky was a little curvy, but had a lot of confidence. Rhonda was tall and slim, a nice balance. Annette, who was with Will, had beautiful skin and was quite striking. Cherry was also there, excited. Our sound technician, Booger, was there too. I wasn't sure how he got that nickname, but since there were more girls than boys, it didn't matter. Jerry showed up at the last minute as well on his own. We almost didn't let him in. He often stayed high these days and had even had some trouble with the police. Working with sound takes focus. and you can't do it well if you're not clear-headed. He had messed up our sound a couple of times before we decided to let him go. Plus, we had a good thing going. If the police started wondering about him and his friends out in the country, they might investigate, and we didn't want to lose our little haven. But because there were so many girls, we decided to let him in. Earl and Cherry kicked things off by running and sliding across the surface, both laughing joyfully. Once they got up, I grabbed Jules and we took our turn. Everyone wanted to join in after that. We must have slid for about 20 minutes until things started to feel more intense. Vicky slid into me, and I instinctively reached out. She giggled as someone else bumped into us, interrupting the moment. I could feel excitement building, so I turned to Annette, and we shared a brief connection. She sighed and seemed to enjoy it for a few moments until someone else collided with us, sending us off the surface. We quickly got back up and paired off again with new partners. I think I ended up with every girl at least once. We only took breaks to grab fresh drinks, laughing as we watched others. Cherry was clearly enjoying herself, engaged with 2 guys at once. Things began to slow down when a new person joined us. Bonnie had arrived while we were busy and decided to join in. She looked a bit nervous and leaned closer to me. I didn't really want to do this. I thought I did, but now I feel unsure. Can you help me out, Grunt? She looked so small, so I gently helped her away from the crowd. Will and Booger were trying to catch her attention, but it could have become a messy situation if Earl hadn't stepped in. What's going on here? Do you need some help, man? Earl shouted when he noticed. Just then, Jerry had mistaken Earl for someone else and was being overly forward. Earl reacted quickly, but it ended in a confusing mess for Jerry instead. Eventually, friends helped Earl push Jerry outside, and they closed the door behind him, leaving the rest of us to continue. This gave me a chance to guide Bonnie to a quieter room. She seemed shaky. I thought I could handle it, but it was too much for me. I wouldn't even have been on the floor if someone hadn't pushed me. Seeing her like that, I invited her to sit with me until she calmed down. She eventually laughed and looked at the mess we had gotten into. How are we going to clean this off? I pulled back the curtain to reveal a shower and took out some clean towels. I assured her I'd keep watch, but she looked at me with surprise before pulling me inside with her. I might need your help with my back. And anywhere else? I thought I was doing a good job as she smiled and relaxed a bit. She reached out to hold my hand, her eyes warm and open. She took a deep breath and then leaned against the shower wall, letting the water cascade over us. Her voice was soft and she said, I'm ready. Let's just take it slow. The time we spent together felt unhurried and close. We were both immersed in the moment, moving together under the warm water, a steady rhythm that grew stronger. She held on, and I could feel how connected we were. By the end, her soft laughter filled the air, and she whispered my name with a smile. When we finished, I gently washed her off, careful with every touch. As I did, I noticed she seemed a little uncomfortable, so I asked, Are you okay? She winced slightly, giving me a shy smile. I wanted this. I knew you'd be gentle. How was it for you? She asked with a playful sparkle in her eye. I smiled back. It was amazing, and you seemed so happy. You made it easy to feel close, I said. We wrapped ourselves in towels and walked back to the couch, where she curled up, wrapping herself in a blanket. She looked peaceful and relaxed, and it made me feel grateful to have shared that moment with her. Why me? I asked as I sat beside her, holding her hand. She laughed and leaned into my shoulder. You're kind and respectful. You treat everyone with care, and I knew I could trust you. And, she admitted with a little blush, I've always had a bit of a crush on you. We sat there enjoying each other's company, sharing soft laughter and quiet moments until we decided to join our friends. It seemed like everyone else had had a fun, carefree evening too. A few of our friends were lying around, clearly exhausted, while others were laughing and chatting softly. We all relaxed together, and after a while, a few of us decided it was time to grab some food. We headed out for a quick meal, laughing and sharing stories, filling up on burgers and fries until we were completely satisfied. When we returned, we found everyone else had either gone home or fallen asleep on the couches. It was a night full of laughter, warmth, and the comfort of being with people who made each other feel at ease. I took the girls to the back room and showed them the fold-out bed I liked, which had clean sheets. They saw it, changed into their underwear, told me to change into my shorts, and get in bed. Before long, we all fell asleep together. The next morning, we woke up alone. After a bit of effort, I got us all into the shower. There was a lot of laughter and splashing as we got cleaned up. Jules stopped me from getting dressed. "Not yet. Bonnie said you had a good time with her last night. Now you need to show her some more of what you can do." She made a lot of noise, and after a while, she finally relaxed. While she rested, Jules had me help her next. When they kissed me, they didn't mind the sweetness, and after that, Jules showed Bonnie how to please. It took a while since Jules wanted Bonnie to really get it right. What can you say about an experience like that? Not much, really. We showered again separately and then returned to our normal lives. Earl mentioned it a few more times, but by then I was with Bonnie and didn't want to share. Plus, Jules had found someone she thought was special. Annette showed up expecting a baby, while Will turned into a jerk and didn't support her. The band didn't exactly break up, but just faded away. I married Bonnie, and Jules lived with her guy for a year before things got rough. So she moved in with us for a while before finding love again. Cherry moved away from Earl, and he was glad to see her go. Fast forward 5 years. I was still working in construction and was the assistant site foreman. The economy was good, and I was doing well. Bonnie and I had been married for 3 years. She worked part-time, and we used my extra money to pay for her nursing program at the community college. When she graduated with honors, she got a weekend job as an ER nurse and kept studying to become a registered nurse, working in the operating room, and she started earning as much as I did. It was my turn next, so I went for a degree in construction management. We also welcomed a daughter, Joy Marie, into our family. Once I earned my degree, we had another baby, Jason Paul. We looked for and bought a house in the countryside, and I made improvements when I could. When Bonnie unexpectedly became pregnant again with July Jane, we sold that house for more than double what we bought it for. This helped us get into flipping houses, not like you see on those TV shows, but more carefully. Buying a home that needed work, fixing it up, and selling it. I got a lot of help from friends I worked with on weekends for extra cash, and when the kids were old enough, they learned to help clean up too. When I turned 35, Bonnie and I looked over our finances, and I decided to quit my job so we could work on flipping houses full-time. I bought some property on the edge of town and built 240 storage units. Now, I have 6 locations with almost 1,000 units and an 80% usage rate. I still hung out with Earl whenever he was in town. We stayed close friends for most of our lives. 4 years after our band broke up, we decided to go on vacation together. Earl brought his new girlfriend, Bonnie, and I went with Jules and her boyfriend. We were in Daytona Beach a few months after a big event, and it was quite peaceful. We had tickets to see a band called Out Cold. They used to be very popular, but now they were playing in smaller places. Unfortunately, they canceled the show because of problems within the band. Their bassist had gotten into trouble, messed up a motel room, and got into a fight with police officers. It was Friday night and traffic was heavy. The police took him away right from the car. He faced many charges, and the bail was so high that the band wouldn't pay it. So they announced open auditions the next morning to find someone to play for that night's show. "Dude, you have to try out. It will make a great story, and what do you have to lose?" We had to encourage him to go to the audition. 4 people tried out before Earl, but only one was decent, and he seemed a bit stiff. They handed Earl an old guitar, plugged him in, and started playing. It was a song we used to do back home. Earl didn't miss a beat. He played well on the next 2 songs too, but he stumbled on 2 songs he didn't know. There were 5 more people waiting to try out, but they ended the auditions early. Out Cold had found a new bassist. They offered him a 12-show deal to see if he could handle touring. Playing 3 shows a week would earn him more money than his regular job back home. Once they finished the paperwork, they asked him if he knew a guitarist who could help them for that night since their rhythm guitarist was unwell. Earl said I knew 4 of their songs. That night I got to experience performing in front of a large audience for the first time. I was very nervous. I'd practiced with them that afternoon, and all 4 songs were in the middle of their set. I played while the regular guitarist took a break to recover. He seemed to need that time to get ready to finish the show. I have many pictures from that special night, my only moment as a rock performer. Earl ended up playing with the band for 10 more years. He joined them at just the right time. They had gotten a new guitarist 5 months earlier, and he and Earl became good friends as the newcomers in the band. They shared a room, and before long they started writing music together. 4 of their songs ended up on the next album. This helped their career take off again, and they returned to performing in large venues. Over the next 10 years, they released 4 more albums, and in the end, they put out 2 best of collections. The first one was from before Earl and Jason joined, while the second featured mostly their work. Booger became a financial planner, and Earl invested a good amount with him. When the band broke up, Earl had $1.7 million in investments, not including his other properties, like the large house I built for him and the land he purchased from his family. Earl got married once, but it only lasted about a year. His ex-wife tried to make the separation difficult, but the agreements she signed worked against her. She said she didn't understand what she was signing, but that didn't earn her any sympathy from the lawyers. Their kids grew up and moved out, with the 2 oldest starting their own families. Bonnie wasn't sure about being a grandmother, but the moment she saw her first grandchild, she was all in. We had them over often. I think she would have kept them with us all the time if she could. Bonnie quit her job when our business became stable, helping me with everything from coordinating crews to ensuring we had permits. She learned a lot about construction. When JJ went to college, Bonnie came to me with a plan to return to nursing. She updated her certifications and worked as an emergency room nurse for a month. One day I came home to find her in tears on the couch. Our small town was normally quiet, but 2 gangs from a big city started causing trouble nearby. They clashed and things escalated quickly. The emergency room became overwhelmed. Although the staff tried to help, 3 people died before reaching the hospital, and Bonnie held a 14-year-old who sadly didn't make it. After that week, she decided not to return to nursing. The local police were not kind toward the gangs, making it clear they needed to stay away. One gang tried to assert their power, but 2 of their members went missing, never to be seen again. The local law seemed typical of small-town folks. They may have their own fights, but when outsiders caused trouble, they came together. The leader of the national gang was a computer expert, and his plans showed he had less than a 30% chance of success, with a possibility of losing many members to jail or worse. He followed the strategy that many CEOs do. He left us alone and focused on expanding to the next town. About a year before Out Cold released their last album, the band decided to take a break for 3 months to relax, recharge, and write new songs. Earl brought his writing partner home, introduced him to the band, and soon he felt like one of us. One night we played music together, and it made Earl very happy. Soon after, he booked a 2-night show at the biggest cafe and concert hall in town. He called me to share the news. "Feeling bored? Who's joining you?" I asked. He seemed surprised. "You and Jules. Who else would I need?" Jules hadn't played in years, but we got her a drum set and practiced every evening for 10 days. We invited a few friends to join us for fun, trying to get back into the groove. Earl also added a couple more amplifiers and another keyboard for anyone else who wanted to join in. The venue was packed. They were even turning people away. Everyone was eager to see the local star who had made it big. We played a few songs that Earl and Jason had written, then moved into classic rock and blues. Jules sang lead on a few tracks, including Tell Mama, an old Etta James song that got the crowd excited. The next night felt like a high school reunion. True to his generous spirit, Earl and Jason donated all the money we raised to local charities, which only strengthened his legendary status in the community. Afterward, they went back on tour feeling refreshed, and their next album became really popular, mainly due to 3 songs Earl and Jason wrote while they were with us. Earl mentioned that he and Jason were growing tired of touring and were thinking about taking a break after the next tour. Sadly, their plans changed when the lead singer, drummer, and lead guitarist died in a car accident. It wasn't their fault, and tests showed there were no drugs or alcohol involved. They had been heading back from breakfast when another driver ran a red light. That driver was found to have been under the influence and faced serious charges. He served time before being released. Earl returned home with Jason, and they lived together. They released one album called Jason and Earl, which sold around 250,000 copies. Jason later asked me to help him build a house. Unlike Earl, he wanted a small cottage with a big yard. I built him a 500-square-foot house with plenty of outdoor features, including a large patio and a hot tub. There was a covered path to his pool and outdoor kitchen, and the yard was beautifully designed. He was very happy, and we spent a lot of time together. Annette had moved back to town, and we often brought her along. Though it wasn't love at first sight, it was clear there was an interest, and no one was shocked when she moved in a few months later. It was a big surprise when Earl passed away. He didn't drink much, loved to run, and was fit, but it didn't matter when his heart stopped working. We found him in his music room, surrounded by his awards and memories, his old bass guitar displayed proudly. He was in the middle of writing a new song and had the recorder on. We got to hear his last breath and his final words in this life. What the? He made the news, and the funeral was very crowded. He was somewhat of a local celebrity, but most people came because they truly liked him. He was just a friendly guy who happened to be successful. I was surprised to find out I was named the executor of his estate, and he had written a detailed will. He left Jason all their shared belongings. A few of his friends received small gifts to remember him by. He gave me his old bass guitar and the little house, along with the 9 acres of land it was on. He also wrote me a letter. "Grunt, so I'm gone, huh? I thought I would be around longer. We had some great times, didn't we? The best moments of my life were when we were playing music together in that old building. I bought it when my family wanted to sell it to a developer. I wanted you to have it in case anything happened to me because you would appreciate it most. Maybe you could organize a memorial party. That would bring back some memories, right? I hope to see you again someday. Maybe we can play music together with Hendrix or B.B. King. Tell Julie and Bonnie I said to look after you, and that I loved them like the sisters I never had, even if I had some thoughts I shouldn't have. Take care, bro, Earl." I read the letter in my office while Jules and Bonnie were with me. I'm not embarrassed to say we all shed tears. Most of his estate, nearly $3 million in property and investments, went to the county for expanding children's activities and improving 2 parks. That was so typical of Earl. There's a life-size bronze statue of him, standing and holding his bass, at the entrance of the park that was named after him. After inspecting the little house, I told Bonnie it was in decent shape, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it. Bonnie and Jules said they would check it out so we could make a decision later. A lot of projects began to stack up. We had made it through tough times, even buying some fixer-uppers here and there. Now the economy was getting better, and there was a need for homes. I had 4 houses under construction, 8 more being remodeled, and I was looking for more opportunities. Jules spent a lot of time at my house, and the girls were in happy spirits, laughing about things I didn't quite understand. On Wednesday, they insisted I take Saturday off, no matter how busy we were. We had been working 6 days a week for 14 weeks, and we all needed a rest. I decided to give my crew Friday and Saturday off, paying them for Friday so they wouldn't lose any income. I was suddenly the best boss ever, at least until Monday came around. July was staying with us again, having just come out of a relationship. She still looked good, with a nice figure and a pretty face, even if she had a few wrinkles. She was a caring and sweet woman who just seemed to choose the wrong partners. We used to joke that I should make her a second wife. She moved into a spare bedroom and got comfortable. July didn't have the same motivation as Bonnie. She kind of floated from one job to another until Bonnie gave her a task to manage some property. To our surprise, she did an amazing job. After a few months, she came to us with a chance to take over a failed project with 11 new houses, most of which were almost finished. Only 3 had sold, and all were now in trouble with the bank. The bank wanted to get rid of it, so we bought it for about 40% of what it would be worth when the market got better. We put July in charge. The first thing she did was get a real estate license under our company. In 6 months, she sold 5 of the houses, covering all our costs. After that, we shared 25% of the profits with her after paying her fees. One day, it hit me that July had been with us for over a year. Even though she could move out, she chose to stay. I asked her about it once, and she got a bit emotional, thinking I wanted her to leave. "I feel safe here, Jimmy. I love you both and the security you give me. I think I'm trying to figure things out for when I fall for someone again." I told her she was always welcome, and she relaxed. The next time we opened our hot tub, she joined us, and both girls were giggling at my reaction. "Calm down, Jimmy. You know this body well enough. Bonnie said it was fine as long as you just looked." I glanced at my wife and saw she was also not wearing her suit. They both smiled at me, waiting for my response. I took off my trunks and settled back with both girls under my arms, feeling the sense of comfort wash over us. Just to be clear, nothing inappropriate happened, although we were all close together. We enjoyed each other's company. When they got out and sat on the edge, I noticed they both had neat trims, not completely gone, just small sections, with Bonnie having bright red and July a soft brunette. "Nice touch," I joked, watching them blush. July was the first one to speak again. "Glad you like it. If you're interested, I bet we could schedule a little trim." I felt my face turn red. They grabbed some drinks and got back in the tub. After finishing 2 bottles, we decided it was time to end the night, feeling all wrinkled. July gave me a warm hug, and I felt a rush of surprise when she pulled away and turned to Bonnie. "There you go, sis. All set for a good night. Before we go, do we have any batteries?" It was one of those summer days that seemed to stretch out, the kind where the heat just lingered in the air, and everyone moved a little slower. We had all been spending more time outside, soaking up the sunshine. The house had a kind of easy, relaxed feeling to it, and both Jules and Bonnie seemed to be sharing some inside joke that I hadn't quite caught on to yet. Every now and then I'd see them exchange little looks and smiles that left me curious. One evening we were sitting by the outdoor fire pit, sharing some wine and chatting. It was something we'd taken up as a bit of a ritual lately, just relaxing and talking under the stars. I could tell Bonnie had something on her mind, but she only smiled, not giving anything away. We'd all gotten comfortable with the casual, easy way we spent time together, sometimes dipping into the hot tub and talking about everything or nothing at all. Our conversations were always light-hearted and filled with laughter, a small escape from everything outside. As we sat together, Bonnie leaned against me, and I could feel the warmth of her skin in the cool evening air. We continued to talk and laugh, but I felt a soft, warm sense of contentment that was impossible to ignore. It was in these simple, shared moments that I felt the strongest bond with them both. It was a connection that didn't need words or explanations, just the comfortable silence and laughter between us, the sense that we were all there for each other. And with that, I found myself smiling, content with the small joys that came from being with the people I cared about most, grateful for every quiet, meaningful moment we shared together. I felt overwhelmed, standing there trying to process everything. Jules and Bonnie exchanged glances, their expressions serious. Bonnie gently reached out, asking me to sit back down so we could talk it through calmly. "Grunt," Bonnie began softly, "there's something we need to share with you. You've noticed how much Jules has been with us, right? It's been years and she's like family, but there's more to it." She paused, glancing at Jules, who gave her a reassuring nod. "Jules has stayed here because she cares about us deeply. She's tried relationships before, but somehow they never felt right. And over time, we've all become closer." I looked at them, letting her words sink in. "So, what are you trying to tell me?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. Bonnie took a deep breath. "We've talked this over. We feel it would be best if Jules stays here for good as part of the family. But more than that," she hesitated, "she would be like a second partner to you, someone who shares in the life we have. I trust you, Grunt, and I believe we can make this work as a family." Her words took me by surprise. I hadn't seen this coming. I thought about all the years we'd shared, how close we'd all become, and the genuine care between us. But there were big implications, and I had to consider them carefully. "All right," I began thoughtfully. "So if we're really doing this, it means some things will change. I've always been committed to you, Bonnie, and this would mean dividing my attention and support equally. I won't take this lightly, and you'll both need to understand that it's a big adjustment for all of us." Bonnie nodded, her gaze steady. "We understand. But we also know this will make us all stronger together. We trust you completely, Grunt. We're in this as a family, and we're ready to work through whatever comes our way." I let out a long breath, realizing how much thought they had already put into this. They were both sincere, and I couldn't deny the unique bond we all shared. This was new territory, but I could see that they believed it would bring us closer. So, with cautious optimism, I nodded, knowing we'd face this new chapter together. "I'll take a drive now to clear my head." I left them in the tub, went inside, changed into some shorts, trainers, and a t-shirt, and hopped in my truck to drive around. I was gone for 3 hours, and they called me at least 10 times, all of which I ignored. When I got back, they seemed quieter than usual. Living room now? I didn't look back to see if they followed. They were on the sofa, padding the space in the middle. I took a chair across from them. What brought this on? Jules looked sad and sighed. Do you have any idea how many bad people our age there are? A lot. Many have gone through tough breakups, some have kids who make life hard for new relationships, and some are just odd. If there are good ones, they're taken quickly. I'm tired of dating guys who only care about my money and how adventurous I am. There are more men than women, and I can't help but think polygamy might become more common. Did you think you'd see men marrying men and women marrying women and people being mostly okay with it? She had a point. That's true, but this is still new ground for us. If I agree, do we tell the kids? Our friends? Bonnie, does this mean you might want to try having another husband later? Jules looked surprised, and Bonnie lowered her gaze. I suddenly felt a bad sense about this. What if this polygamy idea spread? No, I couldn't accept this. I decided to approach this carefully. If she was thinking about others, it felt like our marriage could be at risk. Do you realize what complications this could bring? If I'm free to be with both of you, shouldn't you have the same right? If that's the path we're on, I think I need to step back. They both began to speak, and I raised my hand. Not now. If we talk, it might lead to decisions that change everything. I promise we can discuss it later, but for now, let's not go there. I went out to my workshop. Working with tools that needed focus would help me clear my mind. I had some black walnut wood from 5 years ago, ready to be crafted. Our daughter was about to have her first child, a girl. She was due in 2 months, and I was making her a traditional cradle. I paired the black walnut with cherry and holly wood, which looked lovely together. I even made one side of the cradle longer, like the old ones. Women used to sit in rockers, sewing or doing other things, with their foot on the cradle's long rocker. Every time the rocker moved forward, the woman's foot would press down on the cradle, making it sway gently. Joy was very excited and a bit annoyed with me because I wouldn't let her see it until after she had the baby. I smiled as I worked. Joy was thrilled about the new baby, and her husband, a nice guy, was overjoyed. He was an only child, and his one wish for their family was to have at least 3 kids. Joy laughed when he told her, saying, "Really? You think you can't handle 3? I thought I was marrying someone strong." They had already picked out names for 4 children. I finally stopped, admiring the cradle that was set aside to let the glue dry. I was cleaning up when I noticed the clock on the wall. It was after 10. Why hadn't the girls called me? Then I remembered why I'd gone into the workshop in the first place. As I walked back to the house, I wondered what my life would be like in a year. The girls were very quiet. Bonnie softly told me that my dinner was in the microwave. I heated the leftovers and ate, washing my dishes and putting them in the dishwasher when I was finished. When I returned to the living room, I noticed a quiet conversation that stopped as I entered. I surprised Bonnie by pulling her in for a hug. Then I did the same for Jules. I love you girls no matter what. I'm going to shower now and head to bed. Good night. I took a shower expecting someone to come in at any moment. They didn't. And to my surprise, no one joined me in bed. I thought I might struggle to sleep, but I was out in minutes. I woke when Bonnie came to bed, but quickly fell asleep again as she cuddled close to me. Things felt a bit off for the rest of the weekend. Monday morning came and Bonnie and I headed to our construction office while Jules went to the real estate firm. Weeks went by and I mostly put the earlier discussion behind me. Jules and Bonnie became more playful and casual breakfasts became a regular thing. We still enjoyed the hot tub together, but nothing happened like before. Then came a day that changed everything again. The girls had prepared a wonderful dinner with grilled steaks and homemade ice cream for dessert. They waited until after we had cleaned up to share their new idea. Jules and I visited the old building today. It brought back so many memories. We hate to see it go to waste, so we were thinking about fixing it up a bit. We could turn it into a little private club and rent it for events. We could create a nice outdoor area with picnic tables and a bandstand for outdoor weddings and gatherings. The inside is spacious, so we could open up a few walls, update the plumbing, and add separate bathrooms. It could be rented for retreats and private meetings, and we might even have a small bar. What do you think? I think you've thought a lot about it. I assume you have the necessary figures and plans for the permits. Who will manage this? Jules replied, "We've finished most of the early work, including the zoning needed. It shouldn't be too difficult since it's still mostly farmland around there. I think the local commissioners would welcome this to help with taxes. I still need to sort out the insurance needed for this operation. It could be quite high, so we'll want as much coverage as possible." Bonnie added, "Our teams will do the work. I don't want to hire outsiders, and we'll need to bring in an architect to ensure the remodel includes the right support structures." "Why are you pushing this so much?" "Because the property is in your name. Earl left it to you, not us. We can only proceed with your written consent." I told them I would consider it. Their disappointment was clear. I think they expected me to agree immediately. 2 weeks later, they showed me their plans. With some remodeling and maybe a small addition, it could turn into a lovely venue for events like weddings and reunions. There would still be a small bar, but based on the insurance agent's advice, it would only be for guests to store their drinks. This way, if anything went wrong after the event, the organizers, not us, would be responsible. They would need to apply for a special permit to bring in alcohol, and it would be only valid for that day. I had another expert I occasionally consulted for projects, and his advice had always been helpful. Once, he saved me a lot by advising against a partnership with another builder. When I declined, that builder quickly found a new partner, took their money, and left. His new partner lost nearly $1 million. A week later, my consultant returned with good news. There are plenty of large venues, but small spaces are rare around here. The only option is the VFW Hall, which isn't in great shape but stays busy since no one else competes. I believe this place will start making money as soon as it opens. I went home and signed the lease agreement, which would be renewed every 2 years. I charged them $10 a year and 25% of the profits. This percentage was to help cover the costs of remodeling. At my request, they created a partnership, and my role, aside from being the landlord, was minimal. This was their project. It took nearly 7 months to remodel and landscape the area. Since it was in my name, I paid the bills through a separate company set up by my accountant and lawyer. I ended up investing nearly $500,000 into it. Our cash reserves were at their lowest in a long time, but we were still making good money, so I wasn't too worried. The place looked wonderful. It could hold 240 people. The team had created things in parts like the stage that could be easily taken down and stored in a utility room when we didn't need them. The venue had nice wooden floors and lovely chandeliers, and there was even a fireplace. The restrooms were modern and elegant. The bar was small but just right for a large crowd. Outside, the area was nicely arranged with trees and picnic tables, and there was even a playground for the kids who came with families. The entire area was fenced in for privacy. We definitely didn't want any child getting hurt on our equipment when no one was watching. They discovered a sign in a barn owned by Earl's uncle, the original sign from the store, and had it restored. They put it above the front entrance under a light. It read, "Abernathy's Mercantile and Farm Supplies," in big letters. They used this name for the venue to honor Earl. Our first event was free. Annette's youngest daughter was getting married. Her budget was tight, and she didn't want Jason to help even though he offered. Finally, Bethany told her, "You have to let him help, Mom. Let him be part of the day. I've asked him to walk me down the aisle and he'll be in all the family photos. You need to set aside your feelings about my father." Jason offered to pay us, but we said no. "We'll think of this as practice for future events. She's almost like a niece to us and a daughter to you. This is a family deal." The venue was almost full. Flowers decorated the hall, the lights were soft, and the sound system worked perfectly. Bonnie held one hand while Jules held the other as we watched the ceremony. I felt warm inside, remembering my own wedding. Then I looked at Jules and saw tears in her eyes. She was thinking about her past marriages. I squeezed her hand a little tighter and she gave me a small smile. As soon as the ceremony ended, the team moved in, rearranging chairs and setting up small tables on the edge of the dance floor. The stage was replaced with a small band. During the second set, Jason stepped up to the microphone with his guitar. He sang a song he wrote for Bethany called "Daughter." By the time the last notes faded, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. After that day, every time someone saw her wedding photos, she would point to the one of Annette and Jason, saying they were her mom and dad. Everyone was filming the ceremony with their cell phones, and soon the song went viral. 4 or 5 agents reached out to him, hoping he would sell the song or let them use it for one of their artists. Instead, he decided to give it away to a local singer who was starting to become popular in country music. He helped make the song and ended up producing the entire album, which included 2 more songs he wrote with the singer. Daughter climbed to number 3 on the country charts and number 6 on the pop charts. The other 2 songs also made it to the top 10 in country. Suddenly, he was in high demand and came out of retirement. He told Annette that if she didn't have his ring in 3 months, he would ask her to find another place to live. This was the push she needed, and soon we were planning a wedding again. The song's popularity had an unexpected benefit. Many people saw how lovely the venue was, and we quickly got booked for months. We hosted many weddings, family reunions in the picnic area that often included full meals, corporate events, and private celebrations. It became the go-to place for reunions. In fact, we even held our own 25th high school reunion there. It was great to see old friends, some of whom we hadn't seen in years. Jason came with Annette, and Will attended with his new wife, keeping his distance from Annette. Booger was there too, and surprisingly, Gordy and his husband showed up. We all said we would try to see each other more often, but I knew it was mostly just talk fueled by nostalgia and drinks. The old friends couldn't believe how much the venue had changed. Will smiled as he looked at the dance floor. It feels like just yesterday we were all having fun sliding on the floor. I grinned back. I can't help but think about it every time I'm here. Good times, right? Yeah, I wonder what it would be like now. Bonnie and Jules look even better and Annette is still stunning. I don't usually share this, but Grace and I have a pretty relaxed view on things. It would be fun to revisit those memories. I laughed and said I'd talk to the girls about it, thinking they would find it amusing. Little did I know Bonnie had walked up behind me, and that conversation changed things. A few months passed. Jules had moved on, finding someone I thought was a decent guy. She seemed happy with him, spending weekends and some weekdays together. I believed it wouldn't be long before she moved out again. She met him while showing him a house, and he had just gotten out of a tough divorce. Bonnie was still warm and loving, but I noticed she often seemed lost in thought. She was spending many nights at the venue with Jules. Will and his new wife became part of our circle of friends. Jason and Annette had come to a sort of peace, but their daughter refused to acknowledge him, calling Jason Dad whenever Will was nearby. It was Jason and Annette's turn to host our weekend get-together. Everything was going well. The food was tasty, the company was great, and drinks were plentiful. At some point, someone suggested we should get in the hot tub. The only problem was that no one had brought swimsuits. Jules smiled, took off her top, and stood there in her shorts and a peach-colored bra. She gave a little twirl while her boyfriend laughed and jumped into the tub. He joined her wearing tight underwear. Who still wore those? Eventually, Will and his new wife hopped in too, with Will in silk boxers and her in her bra. Annette and Jason followed, then Booger and Jenny. That left just me and Bonnie. She was in a pretty sundress with just a pair of panties underneath. Slightly swaying, she unbuttoned the dress until it slid off her shoulders and fell to the deck. She stood there, clearly feeling the moment, and the others cheered. Soon there was a pile of bras off to the side. I decided to join in and we all sat together, laughing and relaxing. The girls asked for another round of drinks, so Jason and I went to the bar to mix them until everyone got what they wanted. After a few minutes, I noticed things had shifted while we were away. Bonnie sat on one side of Will and Jules on the other. The only free seat was next to Will's wife. I noticed her clothing had been tossed aside. My expression soured as I approached the tub. Suddenly, the jets turned on. Most everyone was without clothes, and I quickly noticed a few hands where they shouldn't be. Bonnie looked up and went pale when she saw my face. "This is too much," I yelled, tossing the drinks into the tub, then grabbing Will and pushing him away from the jets. Chaos erupted, and Jason pulled me back. We both ended up in the tub, and as I grabbed my clothes, I walked out, ignoring the noise behind me. I drove away, seeing Bonnie still in her state of undress. My phone began to ring almost immediately. I remembered that Bonnie, Jules, and I were on the same phone plan, which included a tracking app. We had set it up mainly for Jules because of her work, allowing us to see where each other was. I pulled over and took out the battery, making it impossible for them to find me. Not wanting to be tracked, I headed to the beach, about 2.5 hours away. With only wet shorts and a t-shirt on, I stopped at a superstore to pick up a few pairs of boxers, shorts, jeans, and shirts. I also got a new pair of sneakers and a few pairs of socks. I changed my clothes in the store, fitting everything into a small bag. I found a nice little motel a few miles from the beach that wasn't part of a big chain. For 3 days, I thought things over, enjoyed a few drinks, and learned to fish off a pier. Bonnie knew I didn't like the beach, so she wouldn't look for me there. I visited a beach we hadn't been to before, and I discovered I liked it. On my way out of town, I stopped at 2 ATMs and took out the maximum amount of cash, which let me pay for most things without a card. I took my time and considered everything. There were many warning signs, and while each one by itself didn't mean much, together they hinted at trouble. Something felt off, and it wasn't just the old shrimp I was using for bait. On the 4th day, I went home, wondering if anything had changed. When I arrived, my daughter Joy was the only one there, clearly there to watch over things in case I returned. She welcomed me with a tight hug, but seemed a bit hesitant. "You know I'm supposed to call if you show up. I don't know what happened, but Mom and Aunt Julie are really worried. They've had some arguments this week about a plan that didn't work out, but they haven't told me much. If I had to guess, Mom did something really dumb and Aunt Julie was involved." "That sounds about right." She smiled. "As straightforward as I expected, so should I call them?" "Go ahead. You might want to let them know I still look really upset and they should be careful approaching me. Tell them if they come in too strong, it might not go well for them." Joy stepped back, her eyes wide. "Daddy, are we going to have to split our holidays? I want my new baby sister to know both sets of grandparents, not just one at a time." I kissed her cheek. "No promises, sweet girl. It doesn't change how I feel about you, and it never will. Where's the baby? Holding something innocent and pure might help me feel better. She's napping, but it's time to wake her up. I'll get her." Soon, I was in my favorite chair, admiring the beauty of new life. The baby was just old enough to notice her surroundings, and everything seemed amazing to her. I heard the door open, but didn't look up. Joy had mentioned that we were taking the baby for the weekend so she and her husband could spend some time together. I joked that it was too much information, but encouraged her to enjoy it. They cleared their throats, and I finally looked up. They seemed tired, which gave me a bit of satisfaction. Jules spoke first. "Where's Joy?" "She's off to spend some time with her husband." That made them pause. "Sweetheart, we need to talk." I smiled at Bonnie, but it didn't reach my eyes. "You're right about that. Before you begin, I need to know something. It's important to be honest. And if I find out you've lied, our marriage is over. Don't try to make it sound better than it is. Just tell me the truth. Was what happened in the hot tub planned?" A moment of silence told me what I needed to know. "So it was." "No, well, not exactly." Jules spoke up, so I focused on her. "Then what was it?" "We were just joking around about reliving some fun times from the past. It all started when Will and Grace began to share stories about how new experiences had helped their relationship. Jason mentioned some things from his time in the band, and Annette talked about a time she tried new things in a past relationship. So all our friends are into that. I never noticed, but that still doesn't explain the hot tub. We were all having a good time. With everyone a bit relaxed, the flirting got easier as the night went on. You were in a great mood, so in the bathroom, Jules and I thought maybe it would be fun to explore that a bit." Bonnie stopped talking, and Jules jumped in. "It was just fun, dear. We never thought it would go as far as it did. You seemed fine with it. And when you stepped out to get drinks, Will suggested we take it a bit further, so we just went with it." "Well then, what did my reaction tell you?" "That we really messed up. Will was pretty upset. He looked like he could use some help." Bonnie seemed a bit let down by me. "I'm sorry to hear that. Tell him I look forward to our next talk about it. Is that your way of saying you want to confront him? We'll see how it goes when I see him next. Now, Bonnie, what do you want to do about our marriage?" Bonnie turned extremely pale, and Jules covered her mouth in shock. "Divorce? Are you serious? I didn't mean for things to go this way. I've never done anything like this before, and nothing really happened. I wouldn't do that again if it means losing our marriage." "I noticed you didn't say it was a bad idea. This is your chance, Bonnie. Be honest. Why do you want to explore this?" She lowered her head, speaking so softly I almost couldn't hear her. You and our friends have had many experiences. I feel a bit left out when Annette and Jules reminisce about the past. You know you were my first and only partner. Whose decision was that? I remember you being just as carefree as the rest of us. Why didn't you try to explore then? If that was what you wanted, why not then? I was scared. Then you were such a great partner that I forgot about everything else, but it's always been there, deep inside. I love our life together, but I'm not getting any younger, and just once I'd like to try something new. I think if I could do that just once, I could move on. I sighed. You know, when we were younger, we did a lot of wild things. Now we've come full circle. Many of us have kids who are older than we were then. We've built our lives based on certain values. Are you willing to risk all of that just to fulfill a desire? What if things go wrong and our friendships break apart? Are we going to become regular people who swap partners? What if one of us says no and wants to stop? Will our partners keep going without us? No! It will be just once! I promise! You promised to be true to each other, but now you want to change that. What about health risks? Back then, no one knew about diseases like AIDS, herpes, or chlamydia. Do you really think it's a good idea to risk our health for a little enjoyment? We'd all get tested and share the results before we start. Really? What about the other night? If I hadn't stepped in, things would have gone much further. Jules turned red. We've already been tested. The whole group? Bonnie answered. Yes. I was so upset it was hard to breathe. So let me get this straight. You all agreed to get tested? This after saying it was unplanned? I look back on that night and wonder why you were pushing drinks so hard. If things had gone further, I would have been the only one left out. Was I supposed to just watch? That's not right. Not at all. I told them you were clean and I have the proof at home. I just forgot to bring it. I looked at her shocked. So you were going to begin this big adventure with a lie, breaking the trust of everyone? How do you know the other results weren't faked or outdated? How can I trust anyone right now? I need to be alone for a bit, to think. Please don't follow me or call. Just give me some space and I'll be back tonight. I handed the baby to Jules and stepped outside. Bonnie tried to hug me, but after seeing my expression, she backed off. Looking back, it might not have been the best idea to go to the local pub we had all visited for years. I talked to a few people, then took my drink and sat in the darkest corner. People quickly noticed I wasn't in the mood to chat and left me alone. That is, until Jason and Booger arrived. I saw them from my table and wondered if they were here for a drink or something more. Any thought that they just happened to be there changed when they paused for a moment to look around and headed straight for me. Can we sit here? One of them asked. What if I said no? But first look me in the eye and tell me who sent you. Jason turned red. Nobody sent us. Jules and Bonnie told us you were back and that we might find you here. We thought we could talk. First, I need to say I'm sorry. Jules and Bonnie made us think you were okay with our plan. You surprised us when you got upset. I guess you're not interested. Not at all. Bonnie can't wait, though, so she'll probably get involved without me. Tell Will that if I find out she went along with it, I'll file for divorce and put all of you in the paperwork. I want everything to be public, not just a quiet deal. This state is strict about such things, and one recent case settled for $2 million. Keep that in mind. Jason looked a bit sick and seemed to wish he was anywhere but there. Booger just kept talking. Will says, do you really think I care about what Will says? Seriously, is he that charming? He won't have to worry about anyone else if you keep acting like this. If you say Will says one more time, I might just lose it. Just listen for a minute, will you? Will says, I had been going to that bar for over 20 years, and that was the first time I got thrown out. Tom, the owner, walked me out himself. What happened back there? I've known you since you were a kid, and that's the first time I've ever seen you hit someone. Sorry, Tom. My life has become a series of firsts. Can I call you if I need bail money? He laughed. It had been a running joke between us since I was 16. I was about to do something foolish when he stopped me. If you keep this up, you'll end up in trouble. If that happens and you need to get out, call me. You'd actually help me. He chuckled. No way. You got yourself into whatever mess they locked you up for. But call me. It will be entertaining. Tom patted me on the back and told me to come back for the darts tournament on Saturday. I stood there with Jason and Booger. Booger had a towel pressed to his face. You knocked 2 of my teeth loose, he said, though it was hard to understand with all the swelling. Be lucky we were sitting down, Booger. If we were standing, it would have been worse. Jason extended his hand. Are we cool? Not at all. I need you both to stay away from me for a while. I think that would be best. Both girls looked scared when I returned. I can't believe you hit Booger. I would have preferred it to be Will, but you work with what you have. I'm going to bed now. Hours later, Bonnie quietly came into our bed. She lay there for a little while, then gently touched my arm. I love you, honey. I just stayed quiet, keeping my breathing steady. She knew I wasn't asleep, but she was smart enough to stay silent. When I finally woke up, she was very close to me. It was nothing new. She had always slept that way. I carefully got out of bed, trying not to wake her, and went to take a shower. When I came out, the house smelled amazing, and I could hear them talking softly. I wondered if they were planning something without me knowing. They stopped talking when I walked in, looking surprised as I kissed one, then the other. Good morning, girls. What's for breakfast? I felt like a king as they rushed around serving breakfast. I kept the conversation light, talking about Joy and our new granddaughter. They started to relax until I shared my thoughts. I don't want to hear about swapping for a while. I'm still trying to understand that my wife wants to be with other people. Bonnie, you've said there are no feelings involved. It's just about experiencing something new, which feels wrong to me. We also need to avoid all the people you were considering. You all planned things without me, and that doesn't sit well with me. If you don't want to agree with this, just tell me, and we can get our lawyer involved. Both women turned pale. Jerry, short for Geraldine, was our lawyer. She mainly handled business law, but there were others who dealt with family matters. I always thought that was an odd title. Where's the family when you're helping to break one apart? What followed was 3 months of a tense peace. Jules moved out to stay with her boyfriend, but returned 2 months later. I never asked, and she never explained, but I knew her patterns, and that romance seemed over. Bonnie was on edge for about 3 weeks, but slowly we started to find our way back to each other. By the time Jules moved back in, we were nearly back to normal. Our social life was limited because the only friend I would talk to was Jason, and Bonnie knew better than to see anyone else alone. About 6 weeks after that incident, I received an email on my business website. Jason was tired of paying to use someone else's studio. He wanted to create one of his own. He was looking for a space about 2,500 square feet, with offices and editing rooms on the upper floor. It was a big project, costing nearly $1 million, and he wanted me to help with building it. I'll understand if you say no. Before everything happened, you were my closest friend. Earl always said you were a good person, but I didn't believe it until I got to know you. You are also one of the most trusted builders around. If you take this on, I know it will be done well. We don't even need to meet often. Just think about it. I did think about it for a week, then went to see him one evening. Annette answered the door and looked surprised. I smiled at her. Hey, Annette, is Jason around? They hugged me tightly, which made me feel a little awkward. But then I remembered why I had been keeping my distance and felt tense. After sitting at their kitchen table for a while and enjoying a couple of beers, I recalled that they had been my friends for a long time. It was not my place to judge them. We talked for 2 hours, mostly about the studio project. I took a lot of notes on my laptop and mentioned an architect I knew who could draw up some plans. Jason hadn't found a place to build yet, so I suggested he ask Jules for help since that was her job. Once we finished discussing business, there was a moment of silence. Finally, I broke it with one question. Why? Annette spoke up. Bonnie was always the youngest of our group. We had experienced more life by the time she came into yours. She was aware of our past, but we were just kids back then. Once you got serious with her, you stayed loyal. She knows that, but when we gathered and reminisced about old times, she didn't fully understand what it was like. Wait a second. I never talked about those times in detail. I wanted to be respectful to Bonnie. She sighed. Not you or the other guys. It came up when it was just us girls, especially after a glass of wine. We might have talked it up a bit, but not by much. You were quite the catch back then. Tanned, fit, with that charming smile, you caught our attention. Plus, you were always considerate, ready to defend us if needed. Her smile faded. You know what? Of all the guys we knew, you and Jason are the only ones who have stayed in shape. You still have your muscles, and that hint of gray in your hair makes you very attractive. None of us expected it to develop into what it is now. Then Will came back, and he brought Grace. I think we all started living through their adventures. Will pushed things forward. Grace was there too, grabbing everyone's attention. They would swap stories, her chatting with us and him sharing tales with the guys about how fun things could be. We kept it safe, just among ourselves, and tried to be careful with what we said. He said the group they left had been together for 20 years. At first, it didn't seem serious, but the idea started to grow. We began thinking about how and when it could happen. We talked about health concerns, and Will suggested we should always check that everyone was healthy. Then, even if it wasn't said out loud, we started to plan. Everyone was aware except you. Will thought you would be the hardest to convince, so we thought we should introduce the idea gently. Then there was the night by the hot tub. We were all feeling good, and when the clothes came off, it felt exciting. You seemed to find it funny, and we decided to take things further. But then Jason accidentally unplugged the tub, and when the jets stopped, it was a shock. It felt like too much, too soon. I really thought you might hurt Will during the chaos. Jason ended up with bruises for weeks. Jason joined in. Looking back, we understand it was wrong to surprise you like that. I wanted to be honest from the beginning, but Will thought it would be better to ease you into the idea. I stared at them until they started to feel uneasy. Have you done anything yet? No. Will wanted to continue without you and include Bonnie, but she quickly stopped that. That would be wrong, and I won't go behind my husband's back. He has to be part of this, all or nothing. I can still picture how determined she was. That made Will focus on her more, but apart from the talk we had after you left, she hasn't spoken to him or anyone else until recently. We still have our wine nights, and the topic always comes up. Does Bonnie still want to go ahead? Annette looked down at the table, stirring her wine glass. I'm sorry, Grunt, but she does. It's really hard for her. She believes it will only be once, then it will end. Afterward, we would have shared memories. We're all getting older, and she wants to experience this before a certain age when she might not feel as good about herself. I stood up. I'm going home now. You've given me a lot to consider. I feel like I need to speak with everyone who wants to take part, one by one, to understand the whole picture, except for Will or his wife. I still think they were acting behind my back, and I want nothing to do with them. I'll ask Jules to look for a place that fits your needs, Jason. I went home and told Jules about the plan, asking her to keep an eye out. Jason let others know, and soon people began visiting my office. Everyone knew I usually finished my paperwork near the end of the day, and that's when they would stop by. John, Jules's boyfriend, was the first to come. Even though Jules had moved back home, they still saw each other. I hadn't spoken to him much before, but in about 5 minutes I realized he wasn't very assertive. He seemed quite eager to please. Maybe that's why she kept him close, but Jules usually liked more confident men. I figured his time with her was limited. He seemed almost sad in how much he wanted to say what he thought I wanted to hear, and I dismissed much of what he said. Still, I asked him a couple of questions. You were married before, right? I asked. He nodded. Why aren't you married now? He hesitated, trying to find the right words. We started well, but after about 4 years, we drifted apart. She started going out with her friends, and one night she came home smiling. She looked a bit disheveled and mentioned she had met someone. I won't lie, I was out drinking, met a nice guy, and we ended up at a motel. It was exciting. If we stay together, you'll have to get used to me having some fun on the side. I promise I'll always come back, though. If you still care about me, let's make tonight special. I'm feeling great. What did you do? I asked. I went along with it. She was adventurous, and it was probably the best time I ever had with her. She apologized later, but soon after she was dating again. She often wanted to be together as soon as she got home. Eventually, after 6 months, she stopped coming back. By then, I was ready for the divorce. It probably hurt him, but I was straightforward. You seem to enjoy being in these messy situations. Is that how you want to remember your marriage? Because if it is, I have to let you know it won't end well, especially with Jules. She needs someone strong, and you're not that guy. Honestly, the only reason she's still with you is for when things get complicated. Your time with her is running out. Most guys would have reacted with anger. He just let out a sigh. That was pretty much the end of our talk. Next, I met with Jules for lunch without Bonnie. We got takeout and sat together in the picnic area. Jules, are you sure about this? I know what happened before, but we were just kids back then. No one was committed. Now we have marriages that go back many years. Is it really worth the risk of damaging those relationships? She spoke thoughtfully. At first I was unsure, but I'm not risking what others might. We both know John won't be a lifelong partner, so if we drift apart, it would have happened anyway. Who doesn't want to relive the past? Plus, if I do this, I can keep an eye on you all. Honestly, Bonnie might change her mind, and if she does, I'm here to help you out. If she decides not to go through with it, you won't need a backup plan. We'll just get up and leave. I don't think anyone would be silly enough to try to stop us. If I upset them, I won't lose any sleep over it. We chatted a bit more, but soon enough we were saying the same things again, so we changed the topic. Since we were having a moment together, I asked her what she thought went wrong in her marriages. My first husband was a real disappointment, but I loved him too much to see it at the time. At first he reminded me a bit of you, but when his true self showed, I realized I had made a big mistake. Did you know that one of our worst fights was about you? That surprised me. Why would you argue about me? He had just lost his third job and was complaining when I finally snapped. I got tired of his excuses and told him to step up for once. I used you as an example, and he went wild. The guy never went to college. I have a master's in business. Grunt is the perfect nickname for him because that's all he'll ever be. She smiled at the memory. I let him have it. Yes, I told him that he was just a high school graduate working in construction. But the truth is, he never lost a job once. Every time he changed jobs, they wanted him to stay. He worked hard enough to start his own business, owns a nice home, and has a wonderful family. What a loser! Let's see, you have a master's. You've been fired 3 times and quit once right before they were going to let you go for not doing well. We can barely afford our rent, can't think about having kids, and our cars are old and barely working. Yes, education is great, but hard work is better, don't you think? Now Jewel was laughing. I thought he was going to explode. He even started to hit me. I told him to go for it because on my worst day I was better than him and I was ready to show it. But instead of hitting me, he just stormed out. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later. Jules went from smiling to looking serious. Derek was different. He worked hard and had plans, kind of like the ambitious goals some countries had a long time ago. But that didn't go very well either. He hid a lot. I didn't see the problems until after we'd been married 6 months. The issue was that his plan wasn't really a partnership. He believed the woman should stay at home and obey. When I disagreed, he got aggressive. He didn't mind being rough and would threaten me if I didn't follow what he wanted. I was shocked. Why didn't you call me? She smiled slyly. You would have done something rash. No, I handled it myself. I waited until he fell asleep, then took a heavy object and wrapped it up. I gave him a good scare. By the time he got free of the blankets, he was already worn out. The last blow was to his pride. I'm pretty sure he jumped off the ground a good bit and was knocked out by the time he landed. I packed up everything I wanted, tapping him gently whenever he moved. It might take him a while to feel ready for love again after I was gone. Can you believe he called the police? They came to talk to me. I showed them my bruises, my black eye, and my split lip. I told them I didn't start the fight, I just ended it. They decided not to arrest me. I later heard that he was hurt quite badly. Maybe he would have been better off being calmer instead of trying to act tough. Wow, Jules, your choice in men is pretty poor. Didn't you ever meet the right one? Her eyes became sad for a moment. I did, but I was young and made a mistake. I still regret it. Besides, there is one man I have always wanted to be with, but I can't tell you who it is. I hope you can find it in your heart to let Bonnie have her dream, because if not, I fear she'll find someone else, and we both know how that would go. Can you hold me for a bit? We sat at the table until it got dark, while she cuddled up and we watched the birds flutter around the feeders I had made and hung up. Next, I talked to Jenny, this time inside our venue. I left Booger waiting in the car. I poured her a glass of white wine, knowing it was her favorite, and waited until she was on her second glass before I asked her about her feelings. Are you really okay with this? She nodded, but it didn't sound strong. I don't believe you. I think Booger is pushing you into this. Jenny, you're 10 years younger than Bonnie, and until now, she was the youngest in our group. You're a beautiful woman, and I know you'll catch a lot of attention if this happens. Can you handle that? My blunt words seemed to bother her, so I continued. This won't be love, Jenny. It will be just a physical thing. Can you look at yourself in the mirror the next day without feeling bad? Will you still see your husband the same way, knowing he pushed you into this? This is about your body. Do you think Booger will care about your feelings as long as he gets what he wants? He won't, and when the excitement is over, you'll have second thoughts. Then, we will all start wondering if our partners think they were better with someone else. It will create a cycle that doesn't end well. She was crying now, and I hugged her, telling her how much I admired her as a person. She eventually stopped crying, started to catch her breath, and then smiled. You don't use many words, do you, Grunt? I've been thinking about this a lot, but I just didn't know how to say it. I really need to consider it further. Booger won't be pleased. Booger isn't the one living with you, you are. She smiled and tried to be playful. Are you really going to pass on a chance with someone younger and exciting? If this ever happens, I'll make sure to get to you first. You can count on it. She laughed. If it happens, I'll make sure you're the first one, maybe even the last. We could just lock the door and spend time getting to know each other. Please stop. You're making me think too much about it. Seriously, Jen, think about what's right for you first. She stood up, surprising me with a bold kiss, then pulled back, giggling. She walked towards the door, knowing I was watching her. Just before she left, she glanced back and winked, teasing me a bit. This is just a little preview of what could be. Booger is going to go crazy when I leave this room like this. By the way, he doesn't like it when you call him Booger. Do you want me to tell him to come in? I don't care what he thinks. I don't want to talk to him. Everyone knows where he stands on this idea. You deserve better than him, Jenny. I hope you see that before it's too late. Just like I didn't need to talk to Booger, I didn't want to talk to Will or his wife. They were the ones who started this whole thing. I did talk to Jason. He smiled and said he'd lived a carefree life long enough to know what this was about. He added that Annette had been with someone who liked open relationships, so she was okay with it. You really don't think this will hurt our friendships? It might. That's why Annette and I decided I won't be involved with Bonnie. I want to keep things good between us. I believe you, but if I go, Bonnie is fair game, and I won't hold it against you. He smiled again. In that case, I'm okay with it. We just need to keep things in control. I agreed, wondering how people could stay composed with so much openness and drinks around. Then there was a surprise. Vicky and Rhonda, two girls we used to hang out with back in the day, were still close friends with Annette. After a few drinks one night, they expressed interest in joining us. We had no idea they had feelings for each other back then. When they arrived, I asked if they expected the guys to leave them alone. Honestly, I hope not. That wouldn't make sense. We're together, but we're not obsessed about it. We sometimes like to explore with someone else. Remember, you've been with both of us before. This will be a fun adventure for us. A little excitement, and then we'll go back to our lives. We'll use the night to create memories that last. Let us join in, we can handle it. Don't pretend you wouldn't want to share this experience with us again. Rhonda had stayed slim. Vicky had likely gained a bit of weight, which showed. They were more noticeable than when we were younger. She pulled her shirt up a bit, adjusting her supportive bra. They may have sagged a little, but that had been the case for a long time. Instead of hanging down, they seemed to stick out more. They laughed at the look on my face while Rhonda helped her get ready. She took her time, making sure everything was in place. That didn't really speed things up. They kissed my cheeks and promised there would be more if I joined them. I thought about everything I had talked about with the others for a while. I even looked it up online. What I found didn't make me feel better. It seemed that couples who explored these kinds of things were quite rare, and many of them ended up separating soon after. Those who tried it just once had slightly better outcomes, but many still separated within a few years. Bonnie was very attentive, but I could see she was nervous about what we might decide. Jules stayed quiet and thoughtful. One evening, just after dinner, I looked at them. I'll do it. There was a shared moment of surprise, and Bonnie finally asked, Do what? Swap, just one time, never to bring it up again. But I have some conditions. Bonnie jumped onto my lap, followed by Jules. They pulled me up, Forget the dishes. Come on, we're going to give you a little test run. The girls were speechless when I said no. No, I meant it about this being a one-time thing. We need to focus on the details instead. I don't want to be in the same place where my wife is with someone else. I don't think I could handle that, and it can't be in anyone's home. It has to be a neutral place. I don't want to walk into a house and remember what happened there. I have a few more conditions that cannot be changed. If you can't agree, I wish you well and we'll try to part on good terms. Jules and Bonnie stared at me in shock. Bonnie looked a bit worried. Wow, you're really taking the fun out of this. I don't think it's going to be that fun. I'm just trying to make sure this doesn't hurt any of us too much. I found something interesting while talking with your group. Usually, one partner is much more excited about the idea than the other. Some couples don't seem too happy about it at all. I predict at least 2 of them might break up in less than a year. Why do you keep calling your friends my group? Bonnie asked. Well, Bonnie, it wasn't my group. I wasn't part of any of the discussions or plans they made. You all worked together without me knowing, and true friends wouldn't do that. Now I'm starting to question if I really knew them at all. I sighed. Or you. That night was quiet, and nothing much happened. It took them 3 weeks to create a plan that might work. We spent some time together, but no one was allowed to talk about it around me. I noticed Will looking at me a few times with a confident smile. I wondered what his expression would be like when he learned about my plans. We were going to a resort in a warm location where people could wear less clothing. I suspected the girls wanted to excite us for the night ahead. We were staying there for 3 nights. The first was just for couples, the second would be a big event, and the third was meant for relaxation and reconnecting. At least, that was my hope. We were leaving on Thursday. The Friday before, I told Bonnie my final rules. She still didn't know our destination when we arrived at the parking lot. Why are we here? Did Jerry have some documents for us to sign? Something like that, I replied. Jerry welcomed us, but seemed unsure about my requirements. I asked if they were ready, and she handed me a stack of papers. Then she guided us into a small conference room and closed the door. Bonnie looked very anxious. What are those? She asked. Safety measures. They're straightforward. Read through them, take a moment to think, and then tell me if you agree. If not, the whole plan is off, and you should never mention it again. I'll give you some privacy. I knew it would take her some time, and since I hadn't eaten lunch, I walked next door to grab one of their well-known sandwiches. I was surprised I could eat at all. 45 minutes later, I returned. She had started reading and quickly put her phone back in her purse. I smiled, thinking some people might be disappointed right now. Her tone was sharp. This makes it sound like you don't think we can do this. Don't you trust me? Not as much as I did. When your wife tells you she wants to be with other men, it shakes your confidence. I believe I'm being reasonable. I'm just putting in writing what you promised. Jerry says it's unusual, but legal. Think of it as a contract. If you don't keep your word, it's all enforceable, no negotiations. If you honor what you said, it should be fine. Are you having second thoughts? The papers were a contract that included a new agreement for after we got married. We never had a contract before because we didn't own anything back then. And I had always trusted her. When you removed all the legal jargon, the papers simply said that we both agreed to spend one night with other people. But this would never happen again, and we wouldn't talk about it. If, after we signed the papers, either of us had intimate relations with someone else, the divorce would happen right away. The one who cheated would get 35% of our shared belongings, while the faithful partner would get 65%. The divorce would be straightforward, and if the one who lost tried to contest it, they would lose another 10%. The part I insisted on the most was that Bonnie could never, ever be with Will Fortner. If she did, we would proceed with the divorce. It also stated that he couldn't be at the upcoming event. He was the one causing my troubles, and I saw no reason for him to benefit in any way. I hoped my request would make everyone decide to cancel the whole plan. He's going to be really angry. He did most of the planning, and I'm sure the others won't be happy about this. Is it really needed? Bonnie, look me in the eye and tell me you want our marriage to last. You're getting your wish, so I expect you to put some effort into this. If you can't, we will move to Plan B. I hoped she would come to her senses, but it seemed that desire often took over. I'll agree, but reluctantly. Bonnie, In 5 seconds, I'm going to tear these papers up and we'll go straight to divorce. Jerry has everything ready for us to sign now. We can split everything evenly and go our own ways. I want you to agree because you love me and understand I'm trying to protect our marriage and our future. It's your choice. Once I said that, I could see a change in her. Her expression softened. She still sighed, though. I love you, and I appreciate you letting me have this. We'll just have to accept it. If the others want to get together later, they can. Call Jerry in. We signed the papers in several places, and Jerry had it all notarized. She gave us each a copy and said she would keep another in her files. That was it, and we were finished. She didn't say a word on the way back to the office. I waited in the parking lot for her to get out. Aren't you coming in? You handle the office, remember? I have to meet with Jason about the Parker project. It's falling behind, and he's excited about his new studio. I'll be busy managing things the rest of the day. Don't cook tonight. Have Jules pick something up, just not Chinese. She smiled at that. Jules would happily eat Chinese takeout every day if she could. Okay, sweetie. I love you. I gave her a quick kiss. I love you too. Now please get out of my truck. She laughed and skipped into the office. My smile faded as soon as she went inside. I hoped everything would go back to normal soon. I never usually took risks, but I felt like this situation might not end well. In a bad mood, I had a few subcontractors who were slow to get moving. I made it clear that I wouldn't pay for delays, and if they didn't shape up, I wouldn't hire them again. It was a weak threat because the construction industry was thriving. Guys would get annoyed over small things, quit, and find new work almost immediately. These subcontractors knew me well since I'd used them for years, and they remembered tough times when one job could mean the difference between staying in business and going broke. Jason was full of energy, like a kid on Christmas morning. He loved his office, especially because Annette decorated it. She hung gold and platinum records on the walls and displayed photos from his time in a band and with the artists he worked with. On a shelf behind his desk, there were 2 AMA awards and a Grammy. There were 2 guitars he owned, an old Fender and a classic Les Paul, displayed in matching cases. There were also amplifiers and a stack of keyboards ready to play. I let him borrow the bass guitar because I wanted to keep Earl's memory alive, and it was better to use it than let it gather dust. The office had pictures of Earl and some from when I played with the band Out Cold years ago. Jason was the guitarist I covered for when he needed to recover from food poisoning. The project was giving me a lot of stress. The electrical contractor nearly panicked when he saw how many wires a recording studio needed, and my team struggled with soundproofing and putting in special plexiglass walls. The computer guys were demanding a lot, but we still finished on time. We even came in under budget and 2 weeks early. Jason and I paused by the base case, looking at a large picture of Earl. I wonder what Earl would think about our new project. Well, first he'd laugh a lot. Then he'd warn us not to do it. I was surprised and asked, Really? He nodded. Definitely. During the 5 years we played with Out Cold, the lead singer married and divorced twice, the drummer 4 times, and Sammy went through a nasty divorce before his girlfriend left him too. The rock and roll life isn't easy for staying in one relationship. A couple of friends tried to join in, but it became too much for them and they decided to leave. Earl was smart to learn from his experiences. When he married Tammy, he made sure to protect himself. That turned out to be wise because while he was away, she started seeing other people. When Earl confronted her, she just laughed and asked how many fans he had while on tour. The truth is, Earl observed and stayed away from any risky situations, which ended up hurting Tammy during the divorce. She didn't have any evidence against him because he hadn't been unfaithful. He had recordings of at least 2 guys and reports from a private investigator about 2 more. I think if the judge could have given her less than what was agreed, he would have. Tammy realized she had made a huge mistake and begged Earl for another chance. She offered to sign a new agreement stating she would get nothing if she cheated again. Earl just smiled, said "Great White," and walked away, sending her a link to a song called "Once Bitten, Twice Shy." I had to think about that for a moment. If that's all true, why are you doing this? Like you. Net wants to try it, and I wouldn't mind one last adventure before we get older. We talked it over and made some basic rules. First, if we like it, we will continue with strict guidelines. If one of us decides once is enough, We will stop for good." I shared what I had done, and he laughed. I would have loved to see Will's face when he found out he went through all that trouble just to get to Bonnie, only to have it backfire on him. Is that what this is all about? Him wanting Bonnie? Yes, that and getting back at you. I don't know what happened in the past, but he really doesn't like you. It was less about Bonnie and more about getting revenge. Booger assisted him because he never got over being let go from the band. That surprised me. I couldn't remember anything that would cause that much hatred. I didn't push Booger out. The band simply split up. It's hard to need a sound tech when there's no music to play. He wasn't making money, so it's not like he lost much. That was 26 years ago. Will and I didn't really get along, and I didn't like how he treated Annette or his other girlfriends, but we managed. Why is he so angry with me? Jason smiled. It's simple. You ended up with the one he wanted for years. Plus, you succeeded. You have your own company while he's stuck in a middle management job. I hear he's not the best worker, and he might lose his job if he makes one more mistake. Getting with Bonnie won't change any of that. No, but it will boost his ego to know he was with your wife and that she wanted him. He is really going to be upset with you now. After all his planning and trying to create this situation, you've just ruined it. Grace won't be happy either. I think she wanted to take advantage of the situation if she could, hovering around to be there for you later. Once this is done, I plan to tell them to stop visiting. They bring too much trouble. Everyone else feels the same way except for Booger. What you did marks the beginning of the end for them. While it didn't make me feel better about what was coming, it did make me happy that we wouldn't have to deal with that couple any longer. We all gathered at the airport. I noticed that for a group heading on vacation, we didn't look too excited. I looked around for Will, feeling uneasy until we were in the air. Bonnie held my hand the entire flight, chatting cheerfully. Rhonda and Vicky were smiling and holding hands while Jason fell asleep, which seemed to annoy Annette. Booger and Jen sat a bit farther away from us, and she looked a little tense. She smiled when I glanced her way, and I smiled back. Jules and John didn't even sit close together, and it didn't seem to bother them. The resort was lovely. The weather was perfect, with white sand and warm, clear blue water. We each had our own little bungalow arranged in a curve along the small bay, and there was even a privacy chain we could use to keep visitors away. The bungalows faced the beach, and there was a nice porch to sit under when it rained or got too hot. If it weren't for the reason we were there, I would have really enjoyed it. We all went to our rooms, and the moment the door closed, Bonnie was excitedly all over me, more lively than she had been in weeks. Not one to overlook a good moment. I enjoyed our time together, knowing it might be the last time I felt this way about being her only focus. Tomorrow would change everything. Later that afternoon, we set up a fire on the beach and started grilling. Once we were ready, the girls exchanged smiles and playfully dropped their covers. They wore small black swimsuits. We were all adults, so there were a few signs of age, but overall we were in decent shape. We admired the girls, appreciating their shapes and sizes. Bonnie joked that they were putting in all the effort, and Booger quickly changed into his swimwear. Among all of us, he was the most out of shape, and I thought he looked a bit silly. He smiled, thinking he had the edge, but his expression changed when Jason and I changed too, showing we weren't wearing anything underneath. I had seen enough in locker rooms to know I was a little above average, but Jason was clearly well above that. The evening was relaxed, filled with laughter as we all enjoyed the warm water and each other's company. The group, comfortable in their surroundings, had a good-natured sense of openness and fun. We shared a few light-hearted jokes, and everyone seemed at ease, each person gradually letting go of any initial shyness. We swam and floated around, laughing at silly comments and casual observations. At one point, I noticed Vicky floating nearby, and we joked about how her personal flotation devices were helping her stay above water. She laughed and played along with the joke, adding her own humorous comments. Rhonda joined us, laughing and adding to the light-hearted atmosphere. The vibe was friendly and full of easy laughter. Meanwhile, I noticed Jennifer looking a bit distant, standing on her own by the water's edge. I swam over, playfully diving under and resurfacing with a splash to lift her spirits. She was surprised but laughed, and I reassured her that she didn't have to feel pressured about anything, reminding her that she could always just enjoy herself. Jennifer smiled, visibly more at ease, and joked back, making everyone around her chuckle. Everything felt lighthearted until I noticed Booger approaching Bonnie. He seemed a bit too persistent, and I could tell she looked uncomfortable. I made my way over and Booger backed off, realizing he'd overstepped. Bonnie gave a small, relieved smile, admitting that Booger had been a bit too eager. I reassured her that she didn't owe anyone anything she wasn't comfortable with, and reminded her that this time was meant for everyone to enjoy themselves at their own pace. The evening continued with a renewed sense of calm and ease as we all settled back into the moment, sharing laughs and enjoying the company around us. The gentle atmosphere and supportive energy kept everyone connected, making it a night to remember. She probably would have talked to every man there if she could. Feeling a bit off, I got out of the water and went to the big grill set up under some trees near the beach. There were picnic tables around it. Jen and Annette walked up, both confidently showing off their bodies. I took a moment to appreciate how different they looked. They smiled and spun around playfully before grabbing beers from the cooler and sitting at the nearest picnic table. "I'm a bit annoyed, Grunt. I hear that someone already claimed the first dance for tomorrow night. You better save a spot for me or I might be upset." I kissed Annette's cheek and was surprised to see her blush. Thinking back to the past, I felt hopeful. "I plan to rest all day tomorrow to save my energy. I think I might need it. Make sure to take your vitamins. I want you ready for anything." Jules and John then joined us. I couldn't help but notice how well Jules had aged. She had been single for most of her adult life, so she kept herself looking good. She took a quick look around and smiled. "What were you all chatting about?" Jen surprised me by answering with a grin. "Oh, just this and that. Sometimes serious stuff, but mostly we talked about whatever came to mind." She seemed to notice my awkwardness. I could tell everyone was having a good time, and to add to the fun, Jules decided to splash me with a cup of water. Laughter filled the air as I jumped back in surprise. "Tomorrow for sure," I laughed, trying to shake off the water. We cooked together and talked about everyday things, enjoying ourselves to the point we almost forgot we were without clothes. After we finished eating, the girls poured some wine while I chose a local beer, pleasantly surprised by how good it tasted. It was stronger than what I usually drank, so I made sure to take it slow. There was plenty of laughter, and the girls played some music while dancing around, making a fun line. The full moon rose over the island, casting a magical glow on the sandy beach. To this day, I remember it vividly. It was one of the most beautiful sights I'd ever seen. As the music shifted, they began dancing closer together, laughing and having a great time. I noticed Rhonda smiling and playfully joining in. I couldn't help but wonder if Bonnie had ever thought about being playful with girls, especially since she and Vicky were so close together. Before long, we were all feeling a bit nervous. The girls pulled their partners towards the beach, playfully urging us along. "Come on, Jimmy," Bonnie said with a tug on my hand. "I've always dreamed of being on the beach under the moonlight." It seemed like this was a planned moment, as blankets appeared. We were all slightly separated, but could still see most of the couples. The bright full moon didn't light up the place much, but I could hear sounds of excitement all around the cove. Bonnie ended up in a new position at the end, one she had never chosen before. I think she did it so she could see the other couples. I noticed someone looking and turned to see Jen sitting with her legs crossed at the edge of the trees. She looked curious as she watched us. It seemed that Booger had not satisfied her, and she smiled at me while Bonnie let out a loud cry of joy. I moved to a different position and focused on Jen the whole time. When I was done, Jen covered her mouth, stifling her own shout of happiness. I thought it was strange. It seemed like no one else would have noticed, especially with Bonnie being so loud. I relaxed, and Bonnie fell on top of me, breathing hard. When I caught my breath, I realized Jen was gone. In that moment, I felt so close to Bonnie. Slowly, all the couples began to separate and head off, some saying goodnight as they went. Bonnie took my hand, and we walked into the warm ocean water, letting the waves wash away the remnants of our intimacy. We entered our bungalow and almost collapsed onto the bed. I woke before sunrise, feeling tense. Today was important. After tonight, everything would be different. Bonnie seemed quiet when she woke up. I heard the shower running and considered joining her, but found the door was locked. I couldn't remember her ever locking the door before in our home. It sent a clear message. She didn't want me to come in. I think she was surprised when I asked about the door being locked. She was drying off, a towel wrapped around her while she worked to dry her hair. Was it locked? I don't remember locking it, she said, her face hidden behind the towel. I knew she wasn't being truthful, but I didn't press the issue. We don't have to go through with this. We can just stay here and let time pass. She just made a sound of disagreement, still hiding. We've made our choice. Just one night, then I'll be yours forever. I thought of reminding her that she promised me that at our wedding, but things hadn't gone as planned. Bonnie, look at me. She looked up, her eyes wide. I want you to remember this moment later and know I gave you a choice, but you didn't take it. Our relationship will never be the same after tonight. It will be in the back of our minds in everything we do. I agreed to this, but you need to think about what it means for us. That's all I'm saying. I walked out, heading down the path towards the main part of the resort. I had planned to make a nice breakfast, but instead, I decided to treat myself. I found a cozy cafe and ordered the island special. Soon, a big plate of fresh fruit appeared, followed by eggs made with spices I had never tried before, topped with 2 unfamiliar cheeses and some sautéed mushrooms on the side. Even though I was feeling upset, the breakfast was quite good. I was almost finished when Jen and Booger joined me at the table. Are you excited for tonight? I sure am, Booger said. I looked at him, trying not to show my irritation. Actually, I'm not, and I don't want to talk about it. Come on, don't be like that. Just think, while Bonnie is having her fun, you'll be with this attractive girl. She's got skills. Jen's face turned bright red with embarrassment. I was already getting angry, and this was not helping. You know what, Booger? You should appreciate that Bonnie chose to marry you. Do you really think this will end well? She might experience something different, and then coming back to you could feel disappointing. A normal person would find this wrong, but once it's over, the thought of her with someone else will eat away at you. Do you really think this is just a one-time thing? He didn't like being called Booger, but he hated being called Reginald even more. I took Jen's hand across the table. I'm sorry, Jen. I bet now, every time he's with you, you'll be thinking about how someone more confident might treat you. You're not just a pretty face. You have a kind heart and a good sense of humor. Be careful when choosing your next partner, and remember, if you need anything when we return, come to me, got it? Booger lost it. Forget you. I might do the same with Bonnie. What do you think about that? I took a deep breath to focus and let go of my anger. I was proud of how calm I managed to sound. What Bonnie does tonight is her choice. She's never acted that way before, but I've learned to expect the unexpected. One thing I can promise, if I hear you bragging when we get back, I will make life very difficult for you. I don't mean in a financial way. I mean you might find yourself in a tough situation. Look me in the eye and tell me you believe me. He turned a bit pale, and Jen looked shocked for a moment before she spoke. What happens on the island will stay on the island, you have my word. Thank you, Jen. I believe you. It's your husband that worries me. I hope he has good insurance. I suddenly felt very tired of everything. The more I considered it, the less sense it all made. Bonnie and I had been happy together for 26 years, but lately something felt different. I couldn't figure out why. I decided to take a stroll through the local market. I enjoyed the lively sounds and smiled at the children helping their parents at the stalls. One little girl was eager to sell me something, following me closely as I tried to leave. I stopped at a jewelry booth filled with necklaces made from colorful shells. Some were small and pretty, while others were large and eye-catching. It struck me that these handmade items were like the work Bonnie and I did with our homes and buildings. Everyone was just trying to earn a living and support their families. I bought necklaces for both my daughters and one for my daughter-in-law. There was also a delicate piece shaped like a flower. I knew Bonnie would love it, and I wondered if it would be my last gift to her. On my way back to our home, I noticed that Jen must have talked to the others about our earlier conversation. They seemed hesitant and overly polite with me, which only fueled my frustration. I spoke to them in short, sharp sentences, and they quickly left me alone, except for Jules. "This is going to be the end of your marriage, isn't it?" she asked. "Most likely. I need some honest answers, Jules. What's going on? Why is she acting this way? It feels like she's trying to push me away." Tears rolled down her face. "I really don't know. I've asked her, but she won't talk to me. She seems distant. The only time I saw her genuinely smile was when she held the new baby and during that hot tub night. Now she doesn't share anything with me. We sat in our shared sadness for a moment until she kissed my cheek and left. As soon as she was gone, Jen, Vicky, and Rhonda arrived. Vicky looked at me and sighed. "You're not going to make a big decision, are you?" "No, I can't do that. Not if I want to stay married." "But if she does," Vicky pressed, "then she's made her choice." I felt their comforting hugs and allowed a few tears to fall. Jen pulled back and said, "I'm going to do what I need to do, so I can show how much better you all are compared to him. I want to hurt him, but he might just enjoy it. Our time is running out and he doesn't even know. Promise I'll see you again, Jimmy. I might really need a hug then. I'm not going anywhere. Even if my marriage ends, I won't lose everything I've worked for or the people I care about. I'll make sure to hug you next time we meet. There might be some kisses too," I said, smiling for the first time. "Maybe even a lot." Finally, something to look forward to. Vicky and Rhonda laughed with her, and the atmosphere brightened. Vicky just said what she was feeling. "I don't know what to do, so I'll be honest. This is tough. I've always liked Bonnie, and I refuse to take sides. If you suddenly find yourself free, make sure to set aside a weekend and get some help. You might need it." My friends had done well to boost my spirits, but soon they ran out of conversation. It was past lunch, and I hadn't seen Bonnie since breakfast. I found her resting on the beach. Booger was nearby but kept his distance. As soon as he noticed me, he quickly moved away. I sat down next to her, admiring her form. She had carried 3 children, but she still looked good. Her body had changed a bit, but the marks were light. She had just turned over, and I noticed her strong physique from regular workouts with Jules. Finally, she spoke up. "Where have you been?" "I've been thinking." I could sense her frustration. "Please don't lecture me. You agreed, and it's going to happen. Do you have anything to say?" "I do have some questions. The biggest one is why now, after 2.5 decades of a good life? Please don't say it's just to try something new. There has to be more to it, especially if you're willing to risk our marriage." She sat up and looked at me for a few moments. "I can't explain it clearly. You're the kindest person I've ever known. You're not perfect, but after all that has happened, I still care about you. But when we started fixing up the love shack, everything changed. I felt trapped, as if I had something tight around my neck, getting tighter every day. Now it feels suffocating. I need to break free before it overwhelms me." I was taken aback and couldn't respond right away. When I finally gathered my thoughts, I replied, "Bonnie, it sounds like you might be struggling with something deeper. You used to be a nurse, didn't you see the signs? We can seek help. You should get a checkup. It might be something physical or hormonal. Let's go home and work through this together. If I've been unkind or indifferent, I can improve." For the first time in a while, I felt a glimmer of hope. But then she quickly dashed it. "You can go if you want, but I'm staying. I've made my choice and I'm committed to it." Looking back, I realize I sounded desperate, and I was. "Nothing is set in stone. Remember our agreement. We can choose not to do this at any time. Let's leave here and go somewhere else, just the 2 of us. We can talk and reconnect. I'm willing to do anything to get us back to a better place. You just don't understand, Grunt. I don't want to go back to what we had. I'm tired of living a life filled with quiet sadness. I hope this changes something and I can feel happy again." Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, I stood up and brushed the sand off my shorts. "Well, I've done all I can. I hope you have a good time tonight, Bonnie. I won't be around to see it. I'm choosing to leave. See you back home." She took my hand. "Please, Jimmy, stay. I'll feel safer with you here. You'll have fun, I know it. We'll go back home feeling refreshed. Maybe I will listen to you and check if something is wrong with me. We'll be better, you'll see. I can see in your eyes that you don't truly believe what you're saying. I'm really sorry, but I can't go on like this. I'd appreciate some time alone to pack." She sat there, tears streaming down her face, but she gave me space. I wondered if this was the last time I would see her. As I packed, I noticed the outfit she had laid out on the bed. It looked like that would be her only outfit for the evening. I called the resort office and asked for a cab to the airport. They confirmed it would arrive in 30 minutes, and there was a flight leaving in just over 2 hours if I wanted a seat. they would happily arrange it for me. I walked out to the cab, taking one last look at the beautiful place. I would have loved it if things had been different. A few people from our group were on the beach and they called out to me. I waved back, noticing none of them were my wife, before getting into the cab. I arrived early enough to get a ticket and sat down to wait. 20 minutes later, a woman rushed up from behind, calling my name. My heart lifted, thinking Bonnie had changed her mind, but when I turned around, it was Jen. She had tears in her eyes as she hugged me. "Can you help me get a ticket?" I bought one, glad that the process was easy. We sat quietly together. 20 minutes before we were to board, Jen needed to use the restroom, so I decided to go then too, wanting to avoid feeling cramped in the airplane restroom. Inside, I felt frustrated. There, at a urinal, stood Will, bragging loudly to the man next to him. "Yeah, my partner and I planned a big party here, but one of the husbands got mad and said I shouldn't join. We're going to sneak in after dark, and he won't know until it's too late. I can't wait to see his face in the morning. Hey, if you want to join, we rented all the bungalows on Half Moon Bay." The man looked uncomfortable, his eyes wide when he noticed my expression. I grabbed Will's shoulder and turned him around. He was still grabbing himself when I hit him as hard as I could. My punch landed on his ear and he went down without a sound. He let out a couple of loud breaths when I kicked him in a sensitive spot. I was surprised I didn't hurt him more, but at that moment, it didn't really matter. The man ran out of the bathroom and I was left alone. In a quick decision, I took his wallet from his pants and then did something very disrespectful. After I washed my hands, I walked out. I gave him one more kick just to be sure he remembered our little encounter. The last time I saw him, he was lying under a urinal, looking very beaten and confused. I tossed the wallet just outside the door, hoping someone would find it and use it wisely. Jen was by her luggage, looking confused. Some guy just ran by like he saw a ghost. What happened in there? Some drunk was acting foolishly in the stalls. He was so out of it that he passed out under a urinal. Let's go, it's time to board. Just before we got on the plane, I glanced back and saw Grace looking surprised. She quickly left, probably to tell her husband what happened. We didn't say much on the flight home, both of us likely wondering if our lives were about to change. I drove her home, and we finally started talking about it. I asked her what she planned to do. "I don't know. I don't want to live with him right now. Maybe this is the end for us. He's been acting strange since Will came back. Here's some advice. Until you are sure, look after yourself. Move around some money, cancel any joint credit cards. You can always set things back later. How did he react when you left?" She smiled for the first time. "He went off the deep end. He'd made promises to Will and John. I told him if it mattered so much, he could figure it out with them." Not what I wanted to hear. I pulled into her driveway as she used her phone. What a jerk. He already closed our bank accounts. That was quick. What am I going to do now? I don't have any money and I really don't want to be here when he comes back. Well, you could ask your Uncle Jimmy for help. He's always ready to support family. I couldn't do that. How would you explain it to Bonnie? I think my expression made my thoughts clear. I don't think I have to explain anything to Bonnie anymore. We have our separate checking accounts along with the joint one, plus our own business accounts. Besides, the old Bonnie would think I was a bad friend if I didn't help you. Go get what you need while I grab my truck. If nothing else, we can put it in storage. I went home, grabbed some clean clothes, and took some papers from our safe. We had our business phones connected to the house in case we got an important call after hours. We always kept the audio on to listen to the messages. The message box was full. While I was in my home office getting some paperwork I needed, the phone rang. There was a pause, then a sniffle, and then Jules's frustrated voice came through. For goodness sake, Bonnie, say something. Do it before it's too late. Then the line went silent. I didn't check the rest of the messages until much later. Jen packed lightly, and without speaking, I took her to one of our houses. The power was on for visiting, and I helped her set up the bed she had brought. That, a sofa, a television, and some kitchen supplies were all she needed. She drove in her car behind me. After she was settled, I left. She asked me to stay, but I needed some time alone. I promised I would check on her soon and told her to call if she needed anything. Jen gave me a soft hug and touched my cheek before I left. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I'm sorry we got into this situation. I'm sorry too, Jen. From my last talk with Bonnie, I could tell something would have happened regardless. You don't need to feel guilty about me. Like Jen, I wanted to be away from the house and everything. I called my managers and told them I had an emergency and would be out of town for a couple of weeks. I promised to call in every few days and for them to contact me if needed. I took my work laptop and not much else. I had been to the beach last time, so I decided to go the other way, ending up in the mountains in a different state. At the bank, I withdrew enough cash to get by and set off. I bought a cheap phone with a pay-as-you-go plan and left my high-end phone in pieces in a drawer at my shop. I reconsidered and put it back together, but when I was 50 miles down the highway, I turned around and stopped at a rest area. I taped it under the bumper of a big truck. I had no clue where the driver was headed, but they would be able to track it and wonder where I was. On a whim, I stopped at a marina by a large lake that rented houseboats. After a lot of conversation and a little extra cash, I secured one without leaving a paper trail. They did want me to leave a credit card in case something got damaged. The woman who helped me smiled sadly as she showed me how to use the boat. I don't know why you want to disconnect, but I suspect there's a woman involved. It's not my place to ask, but are you sure this is the best choice? I sighed, realizing it might be that obvious. I explained, I'm like an old wolf. When I'm hurt, I prefer to retreat into solitude to either heal or find peace. It will pass soon and I'll be ready to face my challenges. For now, my main goal is to find where the fish are biting. She gave me some advice and directed me to a small grocery store for supplies. I passed a local market and stopped to pick up some fresh vegetables before loading up on meats and sandwich items. I also bought a 12-pack of my favorite drinks, some soft drinks, and I was set. The owners insisted on giving me an hour of guidance before I went out on my own. This lake is big, but it's not too big. Be careful. You're not the only one out there who might be unsure. For the best fishing, head north towards the lake's opening. There are plenty of big fish up that way. Satisfied, they left me alone. The boat had a small TV and a satellite dish. Keep an eye on the weather reports. We get thunderstorms this time of year. If you see one coming, find a cove, drop the anchor, and wait it out. Stay away from the main channel when it storms. The water can get rough. I spent time fishing, visiting other marinas, and eating at various local spots. Most were good, a few were exceptional, and one had some pretty bad food. I would anchor in a cove, walk ashore, and explore the woods in the national park that mostly surrounded the lake. When I returned the boat and shared how I had spent my time, the owners looked shocked. That area is a bear reserve. People shouldn't be there, especially with the mothers caring for their cubs right now. You were lucky. I smiled. Sometimes not knowing can be a blessing. Well, that would have been useful information when I rented the boat. You didn't read any of the pamphlets we gave you, did you? Their concern made me rethink not reading the information. I called in every day and listened to my managers express their frustrations about my absence. They had a common complaint. Bonnie is driving us all crazy. Maybe you should call her so we can focus on work. I had set my phone to private, warning them ahead of time. That way they couldn't give her my number, which I was sure they would have by now. The time had come for me to return home, whatever that meant. I arrived home mid-morning, hoping to avoid any drama for a while longer. Bonnie and Jules were on the couch when I walked in. Bonnie jumped up and nearly rushed toward me, but Jules held her back. Bonnie, remember what we discussed? It must have been a serious conversation because she stopped right away. I almost smiled. Hi, Jules. Then I turned to my wife and simply said her name. Bonnie. She sat back down, looking hopeful. Can we talk about it? Why? We talked and talked until we reached this point. In the end, you pretty much told me to stop complaining because what was going to happen would happen whether I liked it or not. It feels like you made a decision on your own. Why should you be upset if I choose to spend time away from you? This is an open marriage, right? I spoke up before she could say more. Before we go further, did you meet up with Will? I saw Grace at the airport when I was leaving, and I find it hard to believe it was just a chance encounter. If she was there, he must have been nearby. Jules spoke for the first time. They were there. We didn't know they would come. Well, except for Booger. Will had trouble at the airport and lost his wallet. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? So, Will hadn't seen me. I surprised him from behind, so he probably didn't know it was me. He might have guessed when Grace said she saw me. I kept my expression neutral. He had trouble? I hope it was bad. Any injuries? Is he okay? But before you answer, did you meet with him? No. Why not? Because I promised you. Then she smiled for the first time. Besides, even if I had wanted to, which I didn't, the troublemaker hurt him a few times. He had to sit with ice for a while. I feel so sorry for him. Maybe we can act it out so I can better understand what happened. That's not the main point right now. I told you how I felt. You told me to get lost and did what you wanted anyway. I don't see how we can move forward. I don't think there's a happy ending for us. She seemed ready for this talk. I noticed Jules behind this. I made a mistake, all right? I thought your love was strong enough that you'd let me have my little experience, and then everything would go back to normal. I guess I was wrong about that. Come back to me and I will show you how much I care. So it's all good then? I don't think so. I'll never be able to look Booger and John in the eye knowing they were with my wife. Booger will be a pain. I don't care about John. I bet he was eager for that. I didn't just lose a wife. I lost what I thought were friends. I'm done socializing with them. If I see Booger, I plan to make it clear he should stay away and never speak of this to anyone. I never thought I'd be starting over at 46, but here I am. At least I can look in the mirror without feeling guilty. Bonnie had grown more pale. I never betrayed you. You agreed. I sighed. She was never going to admit that what she did hurt our marriage, and I was never going to forgive her for not respecting it. Maybe I did at first, but before anything actually happened, I told you I couldn't go through with it, and I really didn't want you to. I begged you not to. Yet you said you were going to do it anyway. You said you were tired of living a life of quiet despair. And you compared our life together to slow suffocation. You wanted to feel alive again. To me, it seems you chose your adventure over our marriage and just gave up on us. Excuse me if I got the wrong idea. No, it's not like that at all. It is exactly like that. I came here hoping to save some part of our relationship for our children's sake. But now they are grown women, and they understand that life doesn't always go the way you plan. I'm going to get some of my clothes and a few things I need, and then I'll be out of your way. I wouldn't want you to feel trapped. Enjoy your freedom, Bonnie. Think of all the opportunities ahead of you. You're attractive for your age, so it shouldn't be hard for you to find someone new. Or maybe you want to explore a bit before settling down. Ideally, you'll find someone who makes you truly happy. I'm done with this conversation now. By done, I mean completely finished. Don't contact me unless it's about business. Watching the emotions on her face was something. Jules looked shocked, so I knew she didn't see this coming either. Bonnie finally erupted. No, that's not what I want, not at all. This was supposed to be an adventure, something we could share and look back on. It wasn't meant to end us. I'm really sorry you feel this way, and I want more than anything to go back to how things were before, or even better. How can I do that? Well, you could see if Mr. Peabody will let you borrow his time machine to go back 6 months and not mention swinging at all. But unless that happens, you can't undo this. It's done. You wanted it, and now it's here, even after I warned you about what could happen if you did it. I'm finished now. Please let me gather my things in peace. Bonnie wanted to argue, but Jules pulled her into the kitchen. They were whispering, but I could tell the conversation was intense. 5 minutes later, Jules came to find me in the bedroom. Her mind is really all over the place right now. I couldn't help but smile a little. Tell you what, Jules, why don't you spend an hour in my thoughts and see how confused I feel? A year ago, I had a happy marriage and a hopeful future. Now, all I have is an ex-wife who doesn't understand why I can't accept her need to be with other men, and a group of people I thought were friends but who turned out to be deceitful and willing to do anything to get what they want. She asked quietly what her standing was with me. I'm still thinking, Jules. I have to believe you were at least partly involved in planning this situation and knew how I would feel about it, but you went ahead anyway. Did you get what you wanted from this? Her heavy sigh seemed to come from deep inside her. No, not at all. It turned out nothing like I hoped. What did you want, Jules? Does it even matter now? Let's focus on your wife, who is indeed your wife. Yes, she lost her way. Yes, we may have encouraged her. And yes, she should have listened when you told her how you felt. She did it because she wanted to, thinking that everything would be fine afterward. It's becoming clear that she made a big mistake and now she's looking for a way back. We could never go back. Let's say we stayed together and tried to forget this. What if she feels that way again? She would probably keep it to herself, but if the desire becomes too strong, then what? We can't watch each other all the time. She has a job that takes her out a few days a week. I'm always busy. Shouldn't I wonder what she's doing while she's working, or what really happens during her outings with her friends? For all I know, it could mean something entirely different. Poor Grunt will never know. I can't help but wonder what she was up to before all this. Please, tell me the truth, Jules. Was she involved with anyone before our trip? She never cheated on you, Jimmy. Not that I know of. I will admit that there were times when you weren't around and the group got a bit close, a little touching, a little kissing, but Jen and I usually tried to put a stop to it. Bonnie didn't try to stop it? Her face turned bright red. No, but she didn't encourage it either. Nothing serious happened, I promise. Distance with friends? Kissing? Does that sound like a happily married woman? I think I've heard enough, Jules. Thank you for your honesty. She tried to say more, but eventually gave up and left. They were sitting at the kitchen table, their tear-stained faces visible. They looked up at me, and I just nodded. I was heading out when Bonnie started crying about how sorry she was, and that it would never happen again. I had a feeling she wasn't really sorry for what she did, just sorry about the trouble it caused. I truly believed she would likely do it again later on, but that was a problem for her new partner, not for me anymore. I moved into a house we were nearly finished fixing up. It was a cozy 2-bedroom home. I chose it mainly for the big outbuilding that came with it. I wanted to set up my woodworking tools again so I could have my workshop. Working with wood to make useful and beautiful things helped me relax. I didn't file for divorce because I didn't want to accept that my marriage had ended. I felt like I just wasn't what she needed anymore. I knew one of us would eventually give up, either her or me. We still talked often since we needed to for our businesses. It didn't take long for our employees to notice we weren't living together, or that Bonnie was a touchy subject for me. One woman kept bringing it up, telling me I needed to deal with things between us every time I was around. I kindly asked her multiple times to stop and focus on our work, but she wouldn't listen. So I took care of the issue my way. She was a subcontractor and a really good sheetrock finisher. When her current job was done, I simply didn't hire her again. She called me many times until I stopped her number, and then her partner came to see me. I had always liked her, so I let her talk. "Why won't you hire us anymore?" she asked. I smiled. "I can't afford you." She looked puzzled. "What do you mean? We charge a bit more than others, but we do great work and we're quick. You've always liked us before. What changed?" "When I said I couldn't afford you, I didn't mean money. You both do excellent work, but Charlotte doesn't know when to mind her own business. Every time I spoke to her, it felt like I was under pressure. She thinks everything that happened between my wife and me was my fault and that I should just accept it. The cost I was talking about was my well-being. Being around her raised my stress levels. My doctor says I need to avoid stress when I can, so I had to let that go. You two will be fine. You're among the best at what you do, and people will want to hire you. Honestly, I will miss working with you." She thought for a moment and then made a suggestion. "What if we do it this way? You talk to me only. Hester will be told not to say anything to you at all. I promise she can behave. If she doesn't, just let us know right away." "That won't work, and you know it. She'll pout until it explodes. Let's just skip the drama." Hester smiled back. "I enjoy a bit of drama. Seriously, I'll make sure she behaves if it comes to that." We've had a few talks about her focusing on her own life instead of others. I'm as tired of it as you are. Give us one more chance. Their work was great, and I didn't like the team I had replaced them with, so I agreed. I made it clear that if Charlotte acted up again, I would let them go immediately. It was 2 weeks before I saw them again at one of my job sites. I happened to have Jen with me. She liked the house I let her stay in, and Jules set up a lease tune deal. I had explained Hester to her one afternoon while Jules and I handled the house paperwork. It was meant to help her credit so she could buy it later. It turned out Booger wasn't great at paying his bills. When Jen saw my truck, she stopped to say hello and gave me a big hug. I noticed Charlotte's eyes widen and I smiled. Jen caught the look. "Is that her?" "Yes, it is." "Well, let's give her something to think about." For the next 20 minutes, she stayed close to me, playfully touching my arm and laughing at everything I said. When I walked her back to her car, she surprised me by leaning in and giving me a big kiss. I was caught off guard and turned bright red while she laughed. The deal still stands, Jimmy. Once you and Bonnie sort things out, and if you're single, I want a chance. Promise me. I surprised her by kissing her back. You have my word. You've caused enough excitement today, so go now. I playfully tapped her arm and she jumped. Her smile was huge as she drove away. I looked up and saw Charlotte watching me, so I smiled at her. She turned bright red and started walking toward me, but Hester held her back. Of course, she called Bonnie right away. I stopped by the office and she had a curious look on her face. So, you and Jenny? No, not me and Jenny. She just saw my truck and stopped by to say hello. She was teasing Hester. But if it were me and Jenny, would you care? How many partners do you have now? None! No man has been near me since that weekend. Why not? I thought after trying something new you'd be out there more. I hear the meat market is always busy with people looking for fun. The meat market isn't its real name, but everyone calls it that. It's the place where people go if they want casual connections. It's really popular with younger folks. On Tuesdays, older women would go there looking for younger men. The young men showed up mostly for casual fun, though some were on the lookout for a relationship. I'm not into that. I just wanted a simple experience, something without feelings involved. You don't understand, do you? There were feelings involved. You made plans and secretly talked to people who were supposed to be our friends. You were acting behind my back, even if you didn't go all the way with them. How many times were we together before that weekend when you thought about one of the guys instead of me? Bonnie flushed red but didn't deny it. I thought it would be a fun adventure for both of us. I wanted to try something new and you were supposed to add to your memories. Looking back, I should have let things be. I got caught up in the thrill. If I had known it would hurt you this much, I probably would have stopped. I am truly sorry I caused you pain. You want honesty, so I'll be honest. After thinking it over, I don't regret what I did. I needed to feel good about myself again. I wanted you to be close to me and to show how much we care for each other. But you're not, and I'm feeling lonely. You need to make an effort, Jimmy. I took a deep breath. Let's go over this again. You're sorry you hurt me. You're not sorry about being with others. You also said you can't wait to show what you've learned, and if I don't join in, you'll share it with someone else. Did I get that right? At that moment, I finally upset her. That's not what I meant. I only meant I'm sorry for hurting you. I did what I did and I won't do it again. It's time for you to stop feeling sorry for yourself and come back to me. If you don't get it together soon, someone else might come along. That was the last straw for me. I didn't say anything else, even as she yelled and followed me to my truck. I managed to get inside and lock the doors before she reached me. That made her angry, so she stood in front of the truck, blocking my way. I was glad I had four-wheel drive that I could activate easily. I started the engine while she stood there smirking. Her expression changed when I pressed the gas and she jumped out of the way. I drove over some landscaping and brushed against her car. Then I left. 3 hours later, the police visited me. Thankfully, I knew both of them. When they asked if I tried to run over my wife, I smiled and said, "Only in my imagination." She was in the parking lot, and you can see the damaged bushes showed I was nowhere near her when I left. "Did you damage her car?" they asked. "Yes, I did. But I did it on private property, and I won't report it to insurance. It's our car, and both our names are on the title. Is it against the law to damage something you own on your own property?" There was a long phone call, but the officers concluded that nothing illegal had happened. I called the car dealership and arranged for a rental car to be brought to me. They took my wife's car for repairs. A week later, I received the divorce papers. I made sure to stay away, so when Bonnie came, she had no one to talk to except for herself and Jules. I knew I would eventually have to deal with her, but I wanted to do it when I was ready. It wasn't a pleasant situation. I made sure to have witnesses with me, thinking it might help. As usual, my plan didn't work. First, Bonnie tried to cry, but when that didn't work, she became angry. "There will be no divorce. This isn't what I wanted when we started this, and it's not what I want now. Just admit you love me, Jimmy, and we can fix this." "Can we fix it, Bonnie? You planned behind my back for months, went ahead with your plans when I begged you not to, and now you are angry that I want out. For 4 months, all I've heard is what you want. When did you stop thinking about me? You've become very selfish, Bonnie, and I don't want to live with that. What if in 6 months you decide you want something else? We had good times together, but it's time to move on." Talking to her felt pointless. After half an hour, I gave up and left. Jules, who witnessed the conversation, came over a couple of hours later. Are you really going to go through with the divorce? Jules, what would you do if your partner did what Bonnie did? What if you didn't agree with it? Her sigh said everything. I warned her on the beach that night. She didn't listen to me. She thought I was just upset because you're not with me. Is there any truth to that? Maybe a little. You were the best partner I ever had. I sometimes think I should have tried harder to keep you. Instead, I let my sister have you. That caught me off guard. You never told me that, Jules. I would have been with you in a heartbeat. You wanted to keep your freedom. Don't get me wrong, I loved Bonnie, but I wasn't really interested in her until you said you weren't ready for anything serious. She sighed again. Don't you think I realized that too late? We can't change the past. If we could, we wouldn't be having this talk. I'm here because I promised to come. I can't pretend to understand what Bonnie is thinking. If I had to guess, I'd say she regrets her choices, but there's no way to change it now. Deep down, she knows she made a mistake. She thought you would put up with everything for love, and now she doesn't know what to do. Don't expect the divorce to be easy. She'll resist every step of the way. I wish she wouldn't, Jules. If she does, we'll just end up with big lawyer bills. Eventually, she'll run out of options, and it will still happen. Ask her to keep it simple and quick. She stood and kissed my cheek. I will, but I doubt it will help. I'm sorry for the part I played in ending your marriage. Not as sorry as I am. Thanks for saying sorry. She left with tears on her face. I thought I had done everything right. I worked with Jerry, our accountant, and even consulted with a lawyer to make the split as fair as possible. We were connected in many ways, and I wanted to keep sharing ownership, as long as we didn't have to interact much. My son-in-law was our project foreman, and my son worked at a different construction company to learn how the business worked. July was in her second year of law school, planning to focus on real estate law. The idea was to pass on joint ownership to them when we retired, to keep the family business alive. I worried that if she fought too hard, we might have to sell what we built, and that dream would vanish. Of course, that was another tool she had. She resisted every option fiercely, threatening to shut everything down until we came to an agreement. She knew it would hurt our business. Mediation was rejected, forcing us to go to court. Both of our lawyers were skilled. When the real reason for my divorce was about to be revealed, they asked the judge for a private discussion. Bonnie looked good, but tired. I learned later that she stayed awake for almost 48 hours to prepare for this. The judge's eyes widened as we explained everything. Bonnie wanted me to drop the divorce. I told her I would expose everything, making sure it became public. By the end, the judge seemed unhappy. This is certainly a complicated situation, wouldn't you agree? Honestly, I'm leaning toward granting the divorce, but it seems there are still feelings involved. Sir, your wife made a big mistake, but I've seen couples recover from worse issues. I think counseling might help. It could make the divorce process easier. If you truly cannot forgive her and the counselor agrees, I'll finalize the divorce after the sessions. I believe 8 sessions would be reasonable. You can choose any counselor you like. We have a list from the court, or you may find someone else. Begin within 2 weeks and don't miss a session unless it's a verified emergency. Do you understand? Well, Your Honor, it's not like I have a choice now, do I? I'll go, but I want your promise in front of all these witnesses that you'll keep your word when it's over. I'm tired of surprises after everything I've been through this past year. This made her angry, but I didn't mind. She agreed, and it became part of the records. I turned down the first 2 counselors after reading what others had said about them. Bonnie's lawyer suggested another pair, a man and woman team with a good reputation. I think Bonnie was surprised when I agreed. Our first session was set for Thursday at 6. I arrived 15 minutes early and was surprised to see Bonnie already waiting. She smiled at me but didn't come closer. I liked the couple right away. Josh and Jane Hart had been working together for 6 years. They seemed like they had many interesting stories to share. Jane got right to the point. Just so you know, we're not here to save your marriage, nor are we here to break it apart. We're neutral. Our job is to help you find a solution to your situation. If you expected something else, we're sorry. Here are the rules. You will speak one at a time. For now, talk to us and not each other. No interruptions. Be respectful and listen when it's your partner's turn to speak, just as they will listen to you. Understand? Do not nod. We're recording these sessions. You can have copies for your records. This way, if there's ever a question, it's easy to check back. We've read your file and will ask some questions to understand your feelings. Who wants to start first? Bonnie went first. She told her side of the story like it was a fairy tale, saying how much I had liked the idea at first, but then backed out at the last minute. She described how she ran home upset while she carried on. It took her 45 minutes to tell her story, mentioning my adventurous younger years and how she wished she had been more wild herself. Josh stopped her, saying it was time to end the session and we would continue next time. I thanked the counselors and left. Bonnie stayed behind, hoping for some private time with them, which she got to some extent because they set up a solo session for her. She was surprised when the counselors told me what she had done and offered me the same chance. I said I would like that, but wanted them to hear my side first. They both agreed this was a good plan. When the next session came, Bonnie was shocked when they asked her to let me speak. I began by talking about our early days and how we dated. You know, this all happened before AIDS and some of the more dangerous illnesses we have today. We were just kids trying things out. My friends and I were a bit wiser and more relaxed about dating. You could spend the night with someone, and they might be with someone else the next day, and no one would get upset. Why? Because there were no expectations. No promises were made, so nothing was broken. If anyone got serious with someone, the playful dating would stop right away. Bonnie was a couple of years younger, and she didn't really join us until the summer after high school. Yes, I was her first and only love until recently. We were committed from the first time we were together. I never missed the old way of dating. It was fun, but after a year with Bonnie, I was happy with just us. We got married, had 3 children, worked hard, built successful businesses, and became financially stable. I thought I had the perfect life. I paused to collect my thoughts. Bonnie tried to speak, but Jane signaled for her to stay quiet. Rules, Bonnie. You'll get your turn soon. Then 2 things happened. A friend passed away and left me some property that included the place where we had many of our fun times. An old acquaintance, a man I never liked much, moved back to town. He and his wife had their own way of living and soon began to push it onto others. Almost every couple we spent time with fell for it, including my wife. It started with talk, then flirting, and a little playful dating until everyone wanted to go back to those carefree days. Or in Bonnie's case, try it for the first time. We argued about it for months. I stopped it the first few times, but then came the hot tub incident. It upset me enough that I decided to leave for a few days. I explained everything in detail, while Bonnie blushed and looked down. After that, things were quiet for a while, and I thought we had moved past it. Then she gave me an ultimatum. I could either go along with this new way of living or she would do it without me. I felt stuck. If I didn't go along and she did, it would surely ruin our marriage. If I joined in, I might save something, even if it would never be the same. In the end, I just couldn't do it. I begged her to stop and leave with me, but she said she was going through with it, and I would just have to accept it. Maybe that's not the right wording, but it was the essence of it. She made her choice, and I left. Now she expects me to just get over it and act like nothing happened. She told me she was sorry for hurting my feelings, but not for what she did. Recently, she even told me that if I didn't resume our normal life together, she would invite someone else into it. That really changed everything for me. It all comes down to trust, and I find that hard to manage. When she goes out, I worry she's off with someone else. I can't help but wonder if, when we're close, she's thinking of someone else instead of being with me. That's why I want a divorce. I just can't pretend everything is fine anymore. The counselors nodded, understanding my feelings. I spoke more about where my life was headed. There were always things I wanted to explore, dreams I set aside because I was married and had responsibilities. Now, for the first time, I can focus on myself a little. I paused, laughing at the realization. I guess now I'm doing what Bonnie has been doing all along. As the session ended, I stood up smiling. The counselors tried not to smile, while Bonnie looked quite upset as I left. The next few meetings felt very routine. It seemed like things would never change. They said we could heal over time, and that our marriage could improve. I thought about this a lot and spoke with some people, including the lawyer for my divorce. In the next session, I arrived with a briefcase. I have given this a lot of thought, Bonnie. I think I found a way to work things out and get back together, but you will need to follow some rules that might be hard. Bonnie looked happy for the first time while the counselors watched me closely. She wanted to agree right away, but I asked her to wait so we could discuss everything. First rule, you will not have any contact with Will, Grace, or Booger ever again. You can talk to the others because they were open about everything. Never means never, Bonnie. If you see any of them in public, you leave right away unless I'm there. No messages, calls, or social media. Is that clear? She agreed a bit too quickly for my liking, so I emphasized the point. I mean it, Bonnie. If I catch you saying hello to them, the divorce is back on. I understand, Jimmy. I promise. Good. Next, I want a health check from our doctor. I know you've been with other people, even if it was just once. I need to know you're healthy before we can be close again. She seemed a bit upset, but agreed. They were clean. We all had to show a health report first. What about your results? How soon did you share them before your outings? 2 or 3 weeks, I think. And during those weeks, did everyone stay faithful or only have one partner? Will and Grace have a swing club they visit often, and please don't ask how I know. I thought by now he would have tried to recruit you all. Bonnie shifted in her seat. Well, he did suggest we visit a club he was part of right after we got home, but no one wanted to go. What's next on your list? How nice of you all, I said. Really, Jimmy? Enough with the sarcasm. I messed up, I admit it. Can we just move on? Okay, but just so you know, if you bring up anything like swinging or swapping in our marriage again, it will be over right then. I could see Bonnie was getting fed up. I've learned my lesson on that. Next. I took out some papers I had with me. Have your lawyer look at these. It's a post-nuptial agreement. It states that if either of us has any romantic involvement outside of the marriage, we would give up everything we built together and leave peacefully. No mistakes, no exceptions. We pack and go. I smiled. I got this idea from a story I read. Looks like it wasn't a waste of time after all, huh? Bonnie didn't like it. She argued and fussed, but then she surprised me and agreed to sign. She wanted me to come back home after our last counseling session, which would be in 5 weeks, and then she would sign the papers. I was shocked. I never expected her to agree to such strict terms. The counselors suggested we should go on a few dates and spend some time together during the day. Dating Bonnie felt strange. The first date was very awkward, but by the 3rd week, we were hanging out a lot. We hadn't taken things too far by mutual agreement, but we got closer in other ways. One night, she playfully pulled away, giggling as she put her shirt back on. 2 more weeks, honey. I want you to rest, take vitamins, maybe get a few of those other things. We have a lot of time to catch up. I drove off with a smile. Maybe this would work out after all. Bonnie finally apologized, saying she was wrong and shouldn't have acted that way, and I believed her. Yet I knew she would remember those times for a long while. Technology has changed so much. I find security cameras everywhere a bit too much, but it's just how things are now. All the properties we own have security cameras, connected to our office or home computer. Plus, a security company checks the footage every hour. It was pricey, but it had prevented several break-ins, and even stopped an arsonist from trying to burn down part of a storage facility out of spite from his divorce. The day after my last date, I got a call from the manager of our security service. We exchanged greetings before he explained the reason for his call. It's probably nothing, but we've noticed some gaps in the security footage at the event hall, the security rep reported. Each time the cameras go off for about an hour and then come back on. There's no specific pattern. It's happened in the morning, early afternoon, and evening, all before 10. We think someone with access to the system might be turning them off and then back on. How would you like us to handle this? Can you override the controls remotely? I asked. Yes. Then, if it happens again, override it right away and give me a call. Make sure you're recording. We might need the footage. This situation made me uneasy, so I decided to stop by the hall for a closer look. I walked around, checking the grounds and interior, but everything seemed perfectly in order. Nothing appeared to be missing or out of place. I thought of mentioning it to Bonnie later. Maybe she'd have some insight on the odd camera activity. The security company even sent a technician to inspect the system, but he didn't find anything wrong, so I went on with my day and put it out of mind. Just as I was settling into lunch, I received an urgent text from the security company. Urgent situation. Please respond immediately. I called them back right away. The captain on duty sounded rattled. Sir, at 12:55, the cameras went down again. We reactivated them as per your instructions, and we now have a sensitive situation. What kind of situation? If you have a laptop handy, log in, and we'll send you the feed. You'll need to see this to decide what steps to take. I hurried back to my truck, set up my laptop, and logged in to view the footage. What I saw left me stunned and deeply unsettled. There were a few people in the hall, including Bonnie, and I saw interactions that were difficult to comprehend. Feeling the need for clarity, I instructed the security team to continue recording for a bit longer to capture everything necessary, and then to turn off the cameras again discreetly. My initial shock slowly settled into a sense of disappointment and confusion. Just as I was about to log off, I decided to listen to the audio feed to gain better insight. Bonnie's voice came through clearly. "This has to be the last time, guys. I'm working on my relationship with Grunt, and I don't want to risk it any further. If we keep this up, we're bound to get caught." I listened in silence, feeling a deep conflict within me. "I'm serious, Will. This will be the last time for a long while, maybe forever. I've enjoyed it, but I want my husband back more than anything else. Don't even think about trying to threaten me. If this gets out, I'll make sure Jimmy comes after you and the whole group. We have resources, Will, and he could make your life very hard. At the very least, he would give you a serious beating. Remember how long it took for you to heal last time? Imagine it being much worse because he wouldn't just stop after one hit." Will looked uncertain for a moment. "He caught me off guard. It would be different if we faced each other." Bonnie smiled. "You're a handsome guy, Will, but you're not tough. Jimmy knows how to handle himself. He works with his crew and is very strong. He learned a lot about physical work and construction. He might not be a champion fighter, but I would bet on him every time. But let's focus on what we need to do now. You know the rule. 1 hour, and the security system has to be back up. I'm surprised the security company hasn't asked about the gaps." With that, she leaned down. Will smirked as he continued talking. "How about this? Let the group rent this place for a party. You'd have to be here, and I doubt Grunt cares much for our activities. We could set the place up to have some gaps in the coverage. We could even put up a little curtain in back. Remember how much fun you had when we went to the bookstore?" She pulled away and looked at him. "It was exciting, but that was a one-time thing, and I said I wouldn't do it again." "That was with strangers. This would be with friends. We all know each other." Bonnie smiled. "I'll think about it. Now time is running out." In the next 50 minutes, she spent time with 3 of the 4 people, then shared some moments with Grace. Afterward, they tidied up a bit, and Bonnie sprayed air freshener around the room. "I'll miss this." "Maybe not. Remember, the group wants to have a party here. You're getting used to this. Just regular time with your husband won't keep you happy." "Yes, it will. I will make sure of that. Let me think about that party, okay? If we do it, it has to be months away. I'll have other things to focus on until then." She kissed everyone as they left, a simple sign of friendship. After they were gone, she looked around with a sad expression. Then she took out her phone and called me. I had heard the phone ring, but let it go to voicemail. Sighing, she shut the door to the building and our life together. I canceled our date for that night, saying I was busy with something important. She asked if we could have dinner after our counseling session. I told her we could, if she still wanted to after that. I didn't go into detail when she asked me. I walked into the counseling session with a manila envelope. Bonnie probably thought it was about our post-nuptial agreement, so she didn't seem worried. I began speaking as soon as we sat down. "Bonnie, you've been lucky. If this had been uncovered a few weeks later, things would have been difficult. But I found out now, and since you haven't signed anything, it will be split evenly. I can accept that. You played a big part in our success, so it's fair you get half." "Honey, I don't know what you mean." I looked into her eyes for a moment until she looked away. I think she realized I knew something. "They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, so instead of talking, I'll let you see these." I handed her the envelope, and her hands trembled as she took it. She pulled out the first picture, glanced at it, and passed out. The photos scattered on the floor, some face up. Jane knelt down to check on Bonnie while Josh picked up one of the pictures and looked at it for a moment. "I know this is hard, Jimmy. We don't know when or where this was taken. It might have been right after what happened at the resort." "They have timestamps, Josh. 3 days ago at our events hall. I think we're done with the sessions, don't you? Even if you don't believe it, I'm not returning. Tell her when she wakes up not to resist the divorce or it will get messy quickly, and I'll make sure everyone involved faces the consequences. I was almost at my truck when I heard her scream. Apparently, she had woken up. She fought it hard, putting up obstacle after obstacle. It was only after I had my lawyer get in touch with everyone involved, requiring them to appear in court, that she stopped. 4 months later, I was officially divorced. Will didn't fare well. Grace wanted to know why he had been summoned, and when she found out, she was furious. Rumors started spreading. Not from me. I got what I wanted and was done with them. And Will lost his job due to poor performance. No one wanted to hire him, so he had to leave town. Everyone was surprised when Grace chose to stay behind. She found a great job and convinced the CEO to let her stay by sharing her story, offering him perks. He was single, and 2 months later she moved in with him. Part of her new role required her to travel with him, and gossip suggested she was adding extra benefits to secure contracts. They seem happy together. It took 6 more months to sort out the finances and business responsibilities. Bonnie still managed the office. I took care of the cruise. Jules handled the real estate side, and profits after costs were divided equally. It required very little interaction between us. In a surprising move, I insisted that since the Love Shack was assigned to me, I would keep full control and give up equivalent value in other assets instead. When her lease ended, I chose not to renew it, effectively closing the business. Her reaction was intense, and I recorded as much of it as I could on my phone. She tried to take me to court, and when that didn't work, she wanted to buy me out. I left her a voicemail. "I'll take it down myself first." That settled the matter. I woke up when she slid into bed beside me and snuggled close. When I put my arm around her, my eyes opened wide. "Good morning, Vicky. How long have you been here?" She shifted against me playfully and laughed. "We just got here. So, you and Jen? This is the 5th time we are back here after she beat us. Are you two living together again or what?" I thought about lean, lively Jen, who was 12 years younger and full of spirit. After my divorce, I took a long break. I returned to the lake I loved, looked around, and bought a houseboat. It wasn't a small one. It was a 72-foot floating home. I had been alone for a week when she showed up. "How did you find me?" She smiled. "I'm not telling. I might need to use it if you decide to run away again. Now invite me on board." I did, then turned around, found a quiet cove, and dropped anchor. Since it was the middle of the week, there were hardly any people around. I got her a soft drink and opted for lemonade myself. We sat and took in the view of the lake. After about 30 minutes, I spoke up. I wasn't running away. I just needed to get away from all the drama for a bit, relax and not think too much. "How's that going for you?" "Look around, Jen. No people, a lot of nature, a perfect spot to unwind. Why are you here?" Her smile was a little mischievous. "Would you believe I was worried about you? I was, but you seem fine. The real reason I came all the way up here is because of a promise." "What promise?" "The one we made that if you got a divorce, I would be your first partner after that. I believe we both meet the criteria now." I was surprised at her words when she giggled. "How warm is this water?" "It's mid-August. The lake is about 80 degrees. Why do you ask?" She stood, pulled off her sundress, leaving her in a pair of small shorts that she quickly took off, then smoothly jumped into the water and floated away, her smile wide as she floated on her back. "Are you coming in?" It took me a moment to remember I was single and had no commitments. In a flash, I changed my mind, took off my shorts, and dove into the water. It felt refreshing. I came up gasping for air, and she floated over to me, wrapping her arm around my neck and settling in behind me. I could feel her warmth against my back. "That was quite a view, hun. When we get back to your boat, I'd like to take a better look at it and see if we're a good match. What do you think?" "I think we should swim back to the boat right now." She reached around and touched me. "Oh, that feels nice." With a push, we spent another 30 minutes floating and getting to know each other better. Finally, after a moment, she gently pushed me back. "Time to go, honey." We swam back, and I let her climb the ladder first, playfully nudging her as she reached the top. She squealed a bit and then smiled. "I can think of better uses for that mouth. Come on." As soon as we were on the deck, we embraced, feeling a spark between us. I turned her around and we shared a deep moment together. She gasped, then started to sigh as we moved together. It had been a while since I felt this way, and soon I sensed it building up. "Honey, I'm getting close." "I already have," she said, holding me closer. "Just let it go." It had been a long time for me, and it felt overwhelming. Afterward, we lay there catching our breath for a moment before she giggled. "Been holding on to that for a while?" It felt like ages, but I think I finally caught up. "Oh no, we're not done yet. Let's take our time this time. I was just as excited, but now I want to enjoy it fully." We got up, tidied ourselves a bit, and went into the lounge, settling on the sofa. A little later, she was sitting comfortably on my lap, and we enjoyed each other's company for a while longer. It was a nice time together, and soon I felt that excitement building again. After a while, we both took a break, panting. "Honey, you have to go easy on an old man," I joked. "When I find one, I will. Right now I'm hungry. Is there anything to eat on this boat?" She wandered through the small kitchen and the bedrooms, making little pleased sounds while I prepared sandwiches. She looked at the bathroom and frowned. "The shower isn't big enough for both of us. Boat life, remember? Limited space. If you want a nice shower, we'll have to wait until we're home." "Oh no, you're stuck with me for 2 weeks. We'll figure out how to make it work." We prepared a small meal and ate it at the back of the boat, enjoying the sunset and watching the moon rise. "This is a beautiful view." "It is indeed." She glanced at me and smiled. "Was I worth the wait?" "You're worth the wait and so much more to me right now." "Good answer. You've taken care of me, and now I'm ready to tidy up and go to the bedroom. I hope the bed is nice." I was glad I had chosen the room with the queen-sized bed at that moment. She took a shower and then let me have a turn. I realized afterward that I needed to buy more towels when we got back to the marina. We cuddled, and she started to share her plans for the day when she suddenly stopped talking and let out a little snore. I smiled in the dim light and held her a bit closer. I woke up feeling nice, watching the blanket move up and down. I pulled it back and she giggled. "I'm glad you woke up so quickly. Good morning. Breakfast will come later. I'm a little busy right now." She gasped in surprise as I playfully pulled her close. She soon forgot what she was doing as we enjoyed the moment together. "Enough! Now you keep your hands to yourself while I finish what I was trying to do before you interrupted me." A little while later, I was feeling good. She laughed as she caught her breath. "Looks like you're still catching up. Don't worry. We'll get you back to normal soon." She jumped up and ran into the bathroom. I heard the shower running, so I got up to make some coffee. She came out, still in just a towel. I leaned in for a kiss, but she playfully pushed me away. "Shower first, and brush your teeth, please." After I showered and got ready, I noticed she was still in her towel. "We need to go back to the marina to get my suitcase. Then we can go grocery shopping." We headed back, and I grabbed her suitcase. I took her to a small local place for lunch, and she loved it. Then we went to the grocery store. I pushed the cart while she carefully picked out each piece of fruit, which reminded me of shopping with Bonnie when our child was younger. The cheerful memories made me feel a bit sad for a moment. "Earth to Jimmy. Where did you go?" I smiled at her, thinking about how fortunate I was to have such a wonderful younger woman by my side. "Just a little memory, a nice trip. Let's check out the steak selection." We were very close during the first week, both eager to reconnect. By the second week, we had slowed down a bit and talked a lot more. Booger was still around, but facing some issues. He needs a partner to take part. He has asked me twice about restarting our relationship. Both times I asked if he was still involved in that lifestyle, and he admitted he was. "Are you expecting me to join in? If that's what you're hoping for, you can leave now," I said firmly. "In the right circumstances, that island trip could have been something great, but you and Will managed to turn it into something cheap." She paused, lost in thought before continuing. "Did you know he resisted the divorce until I decided to follow your advice and hinted that I'd make his activities public? He quickly backed down after that. Now when I look at him, I feel sad. He's put on about 30 pounds and even started combing his hair to cover his bald spot. If we were still together, he'd probably be the last choice in the group. I shudder to think what the rest of his crowd is like if he's a reflection. I've tried not to judge people who choose that lifestyle," I said thoughtfully. "If it works for them and both partners genuinely agree, I understand the appeal. I've read that only a tiny fraction of couples go that route, and for them, the chance of divorce is much higher than average. It's a risky path for anyone who wants a committed relationship. Still, some people aren't made to stay with one person, and maybe that's an option for them. I sighed. I didn't end things with Bonnie because she wanted to explore. I thought we were finding our way back to each other until I saw those tapes. I ended it because she chose that lifestyle and kept it hidden from me, even though she knew how I felt. It was clear that she preferred that life over the one we had, and I couldn't accept that. Jen hesitated for a moment. I might as well tell you. You'd find out soon enough. Bonnie is fully into that lifestyle now. She often goes with Booger to events and isn't particularly quiet about it. She feels that, as a single person, it doesn't matter what others think. Your kids aren't too happy with her right now. I had tried to shield the kids from the details of our divorce, but they were grown and quick to pick up on things. They still kept in touch with their mom, but it was strained at the moment. Our youngest, July, took it the hardest and hadn't really spoken to her in months. Bonnie blames me for the distance, though I've never discussed our breakup with them. Jen and I spent our last few days together, mostly talking and reconnecting. I was ready to leave with her, finally stepping out of my self-imposed solitude and rejoining the world. Just before we left, we had an honest conversation. I don't know about you, but I'd like to keep seeing you when we get back. Maybe this is just a phase for us, but I'd like to see if it could be more. I kissed her. I'll be seeing you until you tell me otherwise, I said, squeezing her hand to make my point. She jumped up with a smile and hugged me tightly. I'm not looking for anyone else. So if I was in a serious relationship, why was I with Vicky? Jen and I had been together for a few months. She wanted us to live together, and I was thinking about it. We both agreed we didn't want to get married right away, but we wanted to be partners. We were at a restaurant when Vicky and Rhonda walked in. They seemed unsure at first, but I waved them over. It had been over a year since our trip to the island. We greeted them warmly and asked them to join us. We chatted briefly until Vicky smiled and said, "So, you and Jen?" I figured that would happen. Jen has liked you for a long time. Jen turned red and everyone smiled more. I knew if you got to him first, we wouldn't stand a chance. I'm happy for both of you, but we still wonder what could have been. I couldn't help being curious. Have you taken any more trips since the island? Rhonda answered. You mean, have we tried swinging again? No, the last time was not very memorable except for Jason and Annette. Just as she said this, Jason and Annette walked in. They were looking for a table, saw us, talked quietly, and then went back outside. Jason, please wait. I'd like to talk to you for a moment, and Annette too. Can you come back and join us? I promise it will be a good chat. He looked at her and she nodded. Annette had changed her hair and it looked nice. Great hair, Annette. You'll outshine everyone if you keep that up. She laughed. I thought you would remember, Grunt. I don't have carpet anymore. How could I forget? That was a year ago, and things might have changed. Soon we were back inside, and 3 eager women watched us come closer. Annette hugged Jen and then looked at Vicky. Help me out here. I need to hug you too. Vicky jumped up with Rhonda following. Annette hugged both of them, and all the girls hugged Jason. We pushed 2 tables together, and it felt just like the good old days, as long as no one mentioned anything awkward. Jason seemed tense, so I decided to bring it up to ease the situation. Jason, I just want you and Annette to know I'm good with both of you. I don't think anything happened with Bonnie, but if it did, that's life. Everyone who was there had to make their own choices. Jason said he would feel better discussing this in private, so the topic was dropped. After being there for an hour, I realized how much I missed these moments. The waitstaff began to give us looks, so we paid the bill and left a generous tip. We all stood outside wanting to hold on to the feelings of friendship that had returned. I had an idea. I took Jen's hand and called back, "You all follow us." I wasn't sure if they would, but every car lined up behind us. I bet they were surprised when I drove into the parking lot of our old hangout spot. I hadn't renewed the lease, but I let Bonnie and Jules use it until their last customer left, which had been 2 weeks ago. I changed the locks and set up security cameras so no one could enter without keys. I called the security office while driving, letting them know I was going in and I would turn off the cameras inside for a short time. I had my own drinks stored away, so I brought them out and placed the bottles on the bar. Jen liked Cosmos, so I mixed her one, and for myself I made a drink with bourbon and 2 ice cubes with a glass of water on the side. I suggested a toast when everyone had their drinks. Here's to the 2 people who haven't spent the night here, Jason and Jen. Everyone laughed. We talked and enjoyed each other's company for a couple of hours before we decided to call it a night. I had only 1 drink and Annette had just 2, so she drove Jason home while I took Vicky and Rhonda with me. Vicky managed to walk, but Rhonda needed help. I took off their shoes, and Jen helped loosen their clothes before we left them to rest. We had just settled down when we heard giggles that turned into playful noises. Jen thought it would be fun for us to join in, so we did. After years of working construction, I was used to waking up early, so I got started on breakfast at 8. About 30 minutes later, Vicky came out, completely unaware of her state. I smiled and said, "Vicky, stay clear of the stove. I don't want you to get splattered." She looked down, realized what was happening, and blushed a bit before heading back to the bedroom. But then she turned around and said, "This isn't anything you haven't seen, and I really want a cup of coffee." She made her coffee and sat down like it was completely normal to be at the table as she was. Rhonda joined us about 20 minutes later, glanced at Vicky, smiled, took off the shirt she had borrowed from Jen, and got herself a cup of coffee sitting beside Vicky. She asked if Vicky's head hurt. They both had a slight hangover, but not as bad as they expected. Jen was the last to come out, wearing a gown. She paused for a moment, then took it off, and I served breakfast to 3 comfortable friends. They stayed for most of the morning, then left with hugs and goodbyes. I smiled at Jen as she loaded the dishwasher. "Looks like we're all friends again." She chuckled softly. They wanted to be friendlier. They told me the worst part of the island trip was missing the chance to know me better. I was a bit surprised. Jen had never shown interest in women. "Would you have ever considered it?" She thought for a moment. "Maybe I would have, in the right situation. I've always been curious, and it would have been a safe place to explore. I still imagine us having fun together." That was something to ponder. The next day, Jason called and asked me to come to the studio. "I might need to expand. I've added more staff, including some talented producers and engineers. Jerry is trying to convince me to start my own label to make more money. I'm considering it. I'd like your thoughts on a remodel." His business must be doing well. The building was still fairly new. I knew he used Jules to host artists for recording. They typically stayed for 2 to 4 weeks, and she had reserved a couple of houses just for him. If there was any damage, the contract made it clear that the artists were responsible for repairs. One band got a bit rowdy and damaged a house, but the management took care of it without fuss. They wouldn't be staying with us again. I agreed to visit late the next afternoon. I was surprised to find the place crowded. Jason smiled at me. "Musicians aren't usually early risers. Some might record until dawn if they get inspired. We make adjustments, and if the producer and engineer are okay with it, they may stay longer. We've gotten some great music out of those late-night sessions." He pointed to a gold record on his wall. It was from the first country artist he worked with, titled Midnight Sessions. He led me to his office, and I paused for a moment in front of Earl's bass. "I just left it there. I figured you might want it back eventually. You just have to ask. I think it's happy here, surrounded by the music." Jason nodded, a silent understanding between musicians. "Still play?" I did. My gear was stored at the Love Shack, but I kept an old Martin guitar with me. Sometimes, especially after the island trip, I played to fill the emptiness. It didn't completely help, but it made me feel a little better. Jason picked up a couple of guitars. "Let me play something for you. Let me know what you think." He played in a smooth jazz style, the notes flowing beautifully. I thought it was one of the most amazing things I had ever heard and told him so when he finished. He chuckled. "It is pretty good even if I wrote it. Now I just need to find some words for it. Earl was the lyricist in our duo, and I have a hard time with that part. It took me 4 months to finish a song called Daughter. Earl always said you were one of the best lyricists he'd ever known." That surprised me a lot. Earl and I had tried writing songs a few times when no one else showed up for practice. I thought the situation was rather childish even at that time, and I told Jason so. He just laughed and handed me the other guitar. "Think about it. We played for almost an hour, singing old out cold songs, a couple of Tom Petty songs like Wildflowers, and a Bob Seger song I had always enjoyed. Jason had a decent voice, and I thought everything sounded great. After we finished playing, we talked about his plans for growth. You need to build up, Jason. You don't have enough land to expand outwards. You could see that this hadn't crossed his mind. A second floor? You're allowed to have multiple levels. I would suggest at least 3 so you have room to grow later if needed. If you don't need it, you could rent it out for a little extra income to help with the costs. Jason was excited about the idea. Will you help me with it? I wanted to ask you a few months back, but since we hadn't talked since the trip, I thought it was best to wait. You've been my best friend since before Earl passed away. It hurt not talking to you for so long. I was surprised, but then realized he was right. Maybe because of my connection to Earl, I had grown closer to Jason than my other friends. I missed his humor and Annette's sharp wit more than I wanted to admit. Do you want to talk about it now? I knew you didn't like it at first. I told Annette that I wasn't sure you could handle it. Bonnie kept saying you were okay with it, and when you finally agreed, I thought you were. Annette and I had a good laugh when you included the no-will clause in the plans. We saw you on the plane and thought you didn't look pleased. She told me she felt that you wouldn't be able to handle it, and it turns out she was right. So what happened after Jen and I left? Jason grinned. Well, Will and Grace showed up. Their arrival and your leaving gave me a funny feeling. He wasn't able to join in, though. He had a lot of pain and spent 2 days with ice on it. Booger and Bonnie kept saying everything was fine, but we didn't believe it. Vicky and Rhonda decided they weren't going to be with Booger. He was really upset when they told him. He insisted they were breaking the rules. Vic laughed. What rules? The agreement was to be with anyone you liked, and Rhonda and I have decided you give us a bit of a weird vibe, so no for you. He paused, remembering, a small smile on his face. They locked their doors after Annette and I arrived. We had our own little gathering. Thankfully, all the girls were open-minded, or they would have been disappointed. It was still a good time, and I managed to have fun with all of them. It was exhausting. Then he frowned. Before we go on, I need to tell you this. The girls left me sleeping and went out for breakfast. I woke up to some noise and realized what was happening. By the time I understood it was Bonnie, I was already on my way, so I went along with it. After we enjoyed ourselves, I got out of bed and complained a bit, but she just smiled and suggested we do it again. Soon, the girls returned and sent her away. Later, we decided to visit the beach one last time before leaving. As we walked around the bay, we spotted Bonnie with Booger and 2 unfamiliar people. They seemed to be having a good time and didn't notice us. We went back, packed our things, and left. I think it took Bonnie 2 days to come back. I was curious. I wondered what made her change from a devoted wife to seeking attention elsewhere in less than a year. She never fully explained during our talks, only that she felt old and unattractive, wanting to explore other relationships before it was too late. It might sound shallow, Jim, but that's likely true. She must have been thinking about it before Will returned. He reignited a spark in her. Eventually, she stopped using her sensible thinking and acted on impulse. She had to know that could cost her our relationship, but she made her choice. I think everything that happened after was driven by the understanding that she might never get a real chance to be with you again. It became a make the most of what you have attitude. You should talk to Annette. She might understand it better than I do. A lot of what I'm saying comes from her. He was probably right. Annette was a high school guidance counselor and had the right qualifications. I plan to ask her to lunch soon. Jason shifted the topic. So, you and Jen? That's quite an age gap. He smiled, and I smiled back. Yeah, Jen and I. I'm not sure how long it will last, but for now, we both need this. We bring each other joy, and trust is really important to us. We arranged to consult the architect who designed the original building to see if adding upper stories was possible, and I left feeling much better. I did take Annette to lunch to discuss what had happened. Believe it or not, she did what many women do when they start to feel older and less attractive. It doesn't matter if their partners still love them. Some women feel they need outside approval. Most don't go to the extent Bonnie did, but it happens. Plus, right now, there's a strong focus on women's empowerment. Many magazines discuss it. While they might not encourage it outright, they hint that such affairs can sometimes improve relationships. Companies like Ashley Madison promote this kind of thing, and it's become a big business. Shouldn't they understand at some level how risky this can be? Most are aware, but they downplay it. Most situations aren't like ours. Usually one partner hides things from the other. Many get caught, but many more do not. Recent studies show that women who cheat often don't get caught. About 3/4 keep their secrets forever. The same goes for men, though slightly fewer are successful at hiding it. It's estimated that in 70% of all marriages, at least one partner strays. "Those numbers are pretty sad," said Ned. She sighed. "Sad but true. If your child starts kindergarten today, by the time they finish high school, 54% of their classmates will come from divorced families. I've seen many upset teens in my office trying to make sense of it." "I couldn't do your job." "That's because you see things in black and white. My work requires me to see the gray areas. Sometimes I can help a kid, and that's what keeps me going." We ended lunch with a promise to stay in touch, and we did. I started playing golf with Jason and Rhonda again, even though she often won. Jen and Vicky would relax by the pool and then join us for drinks and a light meal afterward. Jason brought along one of his new engineers to join our group. We didn't like him at first because he easily outplayed us. Still, aside from golf, he was a good guy and his wife was lovely. I had been thinking about what to do with the Love Shack. I didn't want it for myself, but also didn't want Bonnie to have it, especially after I saw how she was using it. One Saturday after we played a round, the alarm went off. We drove over to check it out. It turned out to be just a dead branch from one of the old oak trees that had fallen against the deck and triggered the alarm. The police came, checked that we belonged there, and advised me to have a tree service take a look at the oaks. Ed and Sandy had never seen the place before and were fascinated by it. Sandy asked why it wasn't being used anymore, but Jason quickly told her there was a lot of history to it and he would explain later. 3 days later, Sandy found me at the construction site I was working on. I was surprised to see her. She told me it wasn't just a social visit. She insisted on taking me to lunch to share her idea. She had a degree in hospitality management and hadn't found a job she liked since moving. "I'd like you to reopen the hall and let me run it. We'll split the costs and profits 50/50ths. Let's try it for 6 months and see if we can make it work." The proposal intrigued me. I wasn't losing anything on the building, but I wasn't making anything either. This is a good way to keep the building in good shape and avoid any trouble. I agreed right away and told her I would ask Jerry to prepare the documents. Sandy was worried that since she wasn't from the area, getting business might be tough. I laughed and told her that until we closed the deal, we had pretty much all the control in the market. Just then, Jules walked into the diner. When she saw me, she almost turned around. We hadn't spoken much since we parted ways. I thought she felt loyal to her sister, which made me a bit bitter. I believed she should have known me well enough to convince Bonnie against the idea of swapping. But that's in the past now. "Jules, where are you going? Please come back inside. I want you to meet someone. After that, I think we should talk, right? I promise I won't get upset, and if I do, just tell me to stop. I care about you as a friend, and I want to make things better. I'm asking nicely." She seemed to think it over for a moment before giving a shy smile and agreeing. She returned inside, and after she ordered her food from the waitress, I introduced her to Sandy. "Jules, this is Sandy Reynolds. She's a friend of Jason's, and her husband is one of his engineers. She's also a good friend of mine, and she has some ideas about reopening the Love Shack." Jules looked a bit surprised. "Before we talk about that, I need to mention that Bonnie and I are setting up a similar place on part of the old Johnson farm. I got the contract for it, and it's allowed for mixed use, so we've bought 3 lots, hired an architect for the plans, got the permits, and the foundation is already started. We plan to open in 6 to 8 months. I was a bit taken aback, and Jules sighed. Bonnie really loved the Love Shack. She worked hard for it, and we were both proud of what we had created together. We felt very upset when you took it away from us. Bonnie is going to be really upset when she finds out. When you tell her, remind her that if she hadn't changed it into her own version of the Love Shack, we could have kept it going. I couldn't allow her to use it the way she wanted, and I already knew from the video recordings that it would lead to problems. Think about how much business would have been lost if the news got out. This town is quite traditional, Jules. It could have failed within 6 months. You might want to make sure that doesn't happen with your new place. Sandy listened carefully, wide-eyed. Jules placed her hand on mine. Please, Jimmy, This isn't the time to discuss these issues. We'll talk about it later, I promise. Right now, I can't assist you." Bonnie would feel betrayed, and our relationship is a bit shaky right now. She did share some things with Sandy while we ate. Then she stood up and surprised me by kissing my cheek. "I've missed you, Jimmy. Call me at the office when you want to chat." Sandy watched her leave. "Wow, that sure stirred things up, huh? I don't know what to say, and it's not really my place to say anything. We'll just have to manage without her input." "The next time you see Jason, tell him it's okay if he wants to share the story. He might not want to, and if he decides not to, then that's the end of it." It was surprisingly easy to get the permits, and we were lucky to have most of the old team back. We were fully booked almost from day one. Sandy knew we needed to be up and running before Bonnie and Jules opened, so she worked really hard to bring in business. She put in 2 weeks of long hours before I had to step in. No more than 50 hours, and I mean it. You've got a husband and a little girl at home, remember? Plus, I don't want you to wear yourself out. Delegate some tasks, take a day off now and then. You'll feel better, your husband will appreciate it, and so will I and your team. Got it? I could tell she understood, but I needed to keep an eye on her. I knew how easy it was to get caught up in trying to make something work. Bonnie had a similar talk with me when we were in our 30s. Jules must have told Bonnie about our reopening. I hadn't spoken to her in nearly 4 months when she called me, going on a long rant that felt like it lasted forever. When she finally paused, she sounded tired. "Do you really dislike me this much? The one thing I did mostly on my own, my one measure of worth, and you took it from me. Now you're giving it to someone else. I took it from you because I was upset. All those nice words you said about us getting back together while acting like nothing happened? At that moment, I did feel hate. Everything you told me after our last meeting felt meaningless. Please don't expect me to be too upset. You brought this on yourself. Why did you decide to ruin everything? Now is your chance to explain." There were a few sobs before the line went silent. Jen was working a job she didn't enjoy, and one day her company was bought out, which led to everyone losing their jobs. She felt down for a couple of days, unsure of what to do next. "Come work for Sandy. She needs an assistant, and you have the skills. You'll earn more than at your old job, and you might enjoy it more. Even if you don't want to, it will still look good on your resume. I'll feel a little strange working for the person I'm living with. You won't be working for me. You'll be working with Sandy. I don't really get involved in the daily business. If you don't want it, just take some time off and find something you really want to do. I'm sure your boyfriend would be happy to help you out for a month or two." She smiled and began the next week. Jason and Annette shared the details of their recent experience with swinging. They weren't as surprised as we expected. Ed laughed. "I came from California for this job, remember? One of the main reasons was to get away from lifestyles like that. I have nothing against it, but it often leads to complications. It's hard for an artist to work well when there are distractions. We know a couple of couples who have made it work, but many cannot." It was summer, and Jason invited us over for a barbecue. He was really passionate about it after Earl introduced him to it. He had 3 large grills and a smaller one, but his favorite was an old converted oil drum. The man who built it for him was very skilled. It had wheels so it could be moved easily. We borrowed it for family reunions, and Jason always cooked. He enjoyed it and was quite good at it, too. The customers seemed to think so. We lounged in chairs, feeling full, when Annette announced it was time to relax in the hot tub. Jason asked if I was okay with it, knowing I had some uncomfortable memories. "As long as everyone keeps their swimsuits on and respects each other's space, I'm fine." The women changed into their swimsuits, and Jason, Ed, and I took off our shirts since we were already in board shorts. I sat between Jen and Rhonda, with Jason and Annette nearby, followed by Vicky, Sandy, and Ed. We relaxed and joked for about an hour. I found it quite enjoyable. I had always wanted a hot tub at home, but Bonnie always vetoed the idea. I never understood why. The women went inside to change and dry their hair. We watched them as they walked in. Jen was the youngest and also very attractive, but Annette was still quite lovely. Vicky and Rhonda also looked nice, and Sandy was petite and charming like the perfect soccer mom. Jason smiled as they disappeared into the house. This is a good life. Ed and I both agreed. I couldn't get the tune Jason had played for me out of my mind and found myself thinking about it a lot. Words began to form in my head. I tried to ignore them, but they kept coming back, so I started to write them down. It still took me a month to finally share them with Jason. I sent them an email and he called me a couple of hours later. "Come down here." We settled with our guitars and he played what we had worked on. It sounded much better with him. I had an idea for a piano part, so we got a keyboard and I played it. Annette and Jen arrived 5 hours later to pick us up. It was already past midnight. They wanted to know what we had been working on, so Jason played back the tracks we recorded, with my piano soft behind his guitar. To our surprise, they started crying. Jason got one of his country artist friends to record it, and his deep voice was just right for the song. Old friends and new lovers told a bittersweet story about moving from a divorce into a new relationship. It was inspired by my experiences and those of others who had faced heartbreak and found love again. When it was released, it quickly went to #1 in just 4 weeks. One reviewer even said it was the country version of Adele's "Somebody Like You." For some reason I couldn't explain, I didn't want anyone to know I helped write it. I worried that if Bonnie found out, she might use it against me. So I took a pen name that Jason suggested, El Shack. I thought it was funny. That was my only attempt at songwriting. Jason encouraged me to keep going, but my heart wasn't in it. Jen and I had been living together for over 6 months. It was fun, and we both needed it. We didn't expect to last, but here we were. Jen's youthful spirit made me feel young, and my experience helped her, making us a great match. We would still see Booger sometimes, and I enjoyed the look he gave us. If Jen spotted him first, she would show me little signs of affection just to tease him. One night, we went to a nightclub for Will and Annette's anniversary. We were not usually out, but it was a special occasion, and our friends were all there celebrating. It must have been hard for him to see us happy together. The women were dressed beautifully, and throughout the night we all danced together. Rhonda and Vicky danced slowly with the guys, just like Ed, Jason, and me. Vicky liked to tease, and she playfully danced close to me, making me aware of her presence. I reacted naturally, and she laughed as she danced over to a quieter spot, joking, "I missed my chance before, but now I'll send you back to Jen." Jen found it funny, and soon I saw her dancing with Vicky, who was doing the same thing with her. When Jen returned, she looked dreamy, and I couldn't help but smile. After a couple of fast songs, the guys took a break, but the girls stayed on the dance floor, having a great time. The place we were at was not like any of the wild clubs. It was nicer and meant for older couples. Still, it quickly attracted attention. We were having a great time until Booger appeared, clearly drunk. "You ruined everything! It could have been fun!" he yelled, while the woman with him tried to pull him back to where they had been sitting. I saw a ring on her finger, which made me think she was one of his partners. Before I could say anything, he turned to Jen and shouted, "You think I miss you? I'm with plenty of people now, and they are all better than you." He lunged for Jen, and I reacted without thinking, pushing him down to the floor. I was sitting, so I didn't think I had much force, but Booger was known to easily go down. He lay there without moving. The manager and a bartender were already coming over when I pushed him. I stood up, apologizing and saying we would leave. "Why? You stood up for your friend. We're the ones who should apologize for this scene. Sometimes alcohol brings out the worst in people, and I can tell this isn't the first time," said the manager. Jen smiled as she explained, "He's my ex, and he didn't handle the breakup well. Then I met Jimmy, and I've definitely done better." The bartender helped Booger up, but he still looked angry. I wasn't sure what was said between them, but Booger suddenly quieted down. True to form, he left his date standing there. "I don't have a way home," she said sadly. We took her to our table, and the ladies comforted her while I called a cab. "I thought he was a nice guy. I'm here because my husband liked his partner. It was just a pity date, really. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. I have a feeling he might get kicked out of the club," she said, sounding like she might regret her choices. I wondered what kind of person would put their spouse in such a position. When the cab arrived, she thanked us for our help, and I walked her outside. Just before she got in, she kissed my cheek. "He hates you, you know. I've heard him talk about you. He calls you the man who ruined everything." I put her in the cab and paid the driver before heading back inside. I leaned in before closing the door. Just a suggestion, but maybe you should think about your choices. You don't seem very happy, and it might not get better." Later, I received an email from her. She said she had taken my advice, and she and her husband decided to leave the group. She mentioned that Booger got angry when they told everyone, blaming me for messing up his life again. Booger sent me an email too. It included a picture that I immediately wished to delete. Instead, I forwarded it to Bonnie and asked her if she thought it was wise to let her partners take such pictures and share them online. Later, Jules told me Bonnie confronted Booger about it, which led to him being banned from the group. Privacy was very important to that group. Booger tried to hit Bonnie, but she was quicker. She knocked him out with one blow. He really needed to stop being so weak. It was the 4th of July, and I was heading to my old home. All my kids were there and really wanted me to come so we could be together again. I emailed Bonnie, asking if we could be nice to each other for a few hours. I didn't want to walk into a trap. She replied right away. "We got along for 25 years. I'm sure if we both try, we can be polite for a few hours. Are you bringing someone with you?" That was a dig at Jen. Bonnie was not happy that we were living together. I had talked to Bonnie one day at the office when I was getting the pay stubs for the crew. They had direct deposit now, but still received weekly stubs for their records. Normally, I would let someone else handle it, but we were really busy, and I hated taking anyone away from their work. Bonnie was surprised to see me and was actually nice at first. Then she made a cutting remark about Jen. "Bonnie, what's your issue? We weren't together until after our divorce. You've probably been out with several guys and maybe gotten close with a few through your swing club, and you're mad because I'm with one woman? She's too young. Let's be honest, when you have fun, do you go out with younger men?" She didn't reply, which told me everything. "Enough! I didn't come here to argue. I'll see you at the picnic." At first, we acted friendly, but after Bonnie had a few beers, she became snippy. I pulled her aside away from the kids and let her have it. "You need to stop this before I get angry enough to leave. I don't insult you for your choices, so stop making comments about the one woman I'm with." I don't think she said more than a few words to me for the rest of the afternoon. I watched her when she wasn't paying attention, wondering if her lifestyle was taking a toll on her. I was surprised to see she looked at least 15 pounds lighter. Her hair was lighter and longer, and the sundress she wore suited her well. The only difference was her eyes. They looked harder, and she seemed less happy. I wondered if her new life brought her the joy we once had. She caught me looking and smirked, swaying her hips a bit. That didn't make me want to get close to her. All I saw when she moved was Booger. The kids were happy but cautious. I waited a little while before telling them that if they kept it up, I would leave. After that, they relaxed and acted more like themselves. The grandkids were all around us. The youngest had just learned to walk and was trying her best to keep up with her cousins. She got tired quickly, climbed onto my lap, and took a nap. Bonnie quietly came over and sat on the swing, keeping some space between us. She looked down at the baby and smiled, but didn't say anything. Soon, the next youngest child came over, and Bonnie picked him up, hugging him close. He fell asleep almost right away. I heard a camera snap and looked up to see July taking pictures. She leaned down and kissed my cheek, whispering in my ear, "I wish this was real." Then she kissed her mother, but I couldn't tell if she said anything. Before leaving, she had to say something sharp. "Send your little friend my best. I'd rather share something special with her. Being with Jen reminds me of the good times we had together many years ago." She seemed like she could explode with frustration. I couldn't help but smile all the way home. On the drive back, I thought a lot about Jen. I had grown comfortable with her and started imagining a future together. I was healthy. My gym buddy said I had the body of someone in their 30s. Maybe I had enough good years left for a long relationship. When I got home, Jen had gone to a party with Sandy and some friends from work. She looked tense and a bit flustered when I arrived, barely giving me a kiss and keeping her distance. I waited a moment before asking her what was wrong. "Something is clearly bothering you. You've always talked to me about what's going on, so please just tell me." "I think I should move out." That was the last thing I expected. I stayed calm. "That's your choice. I don't own you, and we haven't made long-term plans. If you feel you need to go, then you can leave." Her surprise was evident. "That's it? Just go? No, please stay or anything? Did you want me to beg you to stay? It seems like you've made up your mind. I'm grateful you told me face to face. Can you be out by the weekend? You're not even going to ask why or try to change my mind. You're sending mixed signals, Jen. I don't really need to know why. If our relationship was strong enough, I shouldn't have to fight for it. I want to thank you for the time we spent together. You were the reason I kept going after the island. But now my mind is clearer, and I won't get upset. That doesn't mean I won't miss you and what we had, though. It just means I can handle the disappointment better now. She seemed to want to discuss it, but I didn't. I left her on the couch crying, wondering why as I drove away, and despite what I said, it genuinely hurt. My chance at happiness seemed to vanish right before my eyes. I decided to avoid any serious commitment in the future. Maybe I would be ready in 10 years or so when I was in my 60s. I was in good shape, still had a full head of hair, and was financially stable, which meant I wasn't worried about meeting people in the future. If I wanted company, I'd have no trouble finding it. Needing some time to myself, I headed to the lake, got my houseboat ready with supplies for a few days, and disappeared into the quiet coves. I knew this was a likely spot if anyone wanted to find me, but the lake was vast, and I stayed away from my usual spots to ensure some real solitude. When I returned to the marina to restock supplies, I spotted Vicky and Rhonda parked by my truck. They saw me coming out of the store with a case of beer in hand and approached me immediately. "We need to talk, Grunt," Vicky said. I looked over at her, feeling a bit of frustration. Part of the reason I came here was to be alone. "Why are you here? This isn't really your concern." "Yes, it is. You matter to us. Don't you want to know why Jen was talking about leaving?" she asked. "Maybe a little," I admitted. "Jen and I had a good understanding. We agreed from the start to be honest if things changed. I was just caught off guard and needed some time to think. I'll be back soon. I just needed to figure out a few things. But I'm heading out now. Want to come along?" They didn't hesitate. We cruised on the lake for a while, then anchored in a quiet cove. As I was getting drinks, I heard a splash. I looked out just in time to see Rhonda jumping into the water. I picked up their clothes and set them on a chair, then leaned over the rail to watch them. They were laughing and enjoying the warm water. Vicky glanced up and called out, "We haven't done this in ages. Come join us, Jimmy. It's fun." I smiled at their enthusiasm and threw the ladder over the side for when we'd need it later, then jumped in. We spent the next hour or so floating around and laughing. There were plenty of playful splashes and hugs along with some light-hearted teasing. Eventually, we climbed back onto the boat and got dressed. Well, mostly. They skipped their tops and asked if I'd put sunscreen on them. I declined, so they shrugged and helped each other out with it, laughing as they did. I just enjoyed the easy, carefree company as we relaxed together in the warmth of the afternoon sun. Finally settled, they relaxed in their chairs with drinks nearby. "Can we talk about it? Could I stop you?" "No, but it would be amusing to see you try," smiled Rhonda. Vicky took the lead in the chat. "You know Jen was upset that you spent the afternoon with your old family." This was the first time in over a year I had all my kids together. If that meant dealing with Bonnie for a few hours, I was okay with it. I didn't invite her because it would have been a mess. Bonnie doesn't like Jen because I'm with her now, and the first argument would have sent me running. I planned to make it up to Jen when I got back, but she didn't give me a chance, hitting me with the "we need to talk" speech as soon as I walked in. Honestly, I never thought this would last. The age difference is... "I'm too far away, honey. Will you give him a nudge for me?" Vicky smiled and did just that, standing up to playfully poke him. Then she got off her chair. "Get in between us, Grunt. That way we can both reach you if you say something silly. Or I could just toss you both over the edge. It's about 4 miles to the marina. Hope you're good swimmers because we're right in the middle of the bear reserve, and you don't want to wander along the shore here." They both looked shocked. "Wow, Grunt. Ever since the incident, which we call the disaster because that's what it was, you've been difficult. Yes, what Bonnie did to you and us was wrong. We thought you'd be okay with it because of your past. Another reminder of how we can misjudge our friends. You don't think we regret our actions? It broke up a group that had been together for years. One mistake and now you and Bonnie are separated. Jen and Booger are separated. Jules lost her boyfriend, and Jason and Nett were on edge for weeks. Even Rhonda and I had a few tough weeks. It was supposed to be fun after all." She sighed. "Sorry I needed to say that. What we came here to tell you is that Jen is really struggling. She went to the party upset because you were with your old family. She tried enjoying herself, danced, flirted, got pretty tipsy, and almost got close to someone. Sandy helped her out, and when she came to her senses, she felt awful, both physically and emotionally. Then she remembered the kisses and touches and thought it was time to talk about your future together. But in her tipsy state, she started off the conversation all wrong. You left her just like that. I think she wanted to surprise you first, but ended up surprising herself. Why are you telling me this? So you can go home and fix things? I didn't cause the problem, that's all on Jen. I went home hoping to make things with Jen more serious, but that idea was quickly dismissed. I'm tired of hearing about my relationships or anyone else's. I think I'll take a break from dancing for a while because I'm exhausted from switching partners all the time. That moment hit me hard. It felt like a light bulb went off in my head. I realized that I had been so caught up in missing my old life that I hadn't made much effort to start fresh. I was just going through the motions, feeling sorry for myself. Enough of that. It was time for me to start living again, on my own terms. I suddenly realized that I really cared for Jen. She was kind and cheerful, putting up with someone like me who was stuck in the past. But I also recognized that she deserved someone better, and as much as I liked her, I might never be the right match for her, and that was okay. I laughed out loud and jumped into the water. The women in the boat were shocked and worried because they didn't know how to steer it. I managed to grab the ladder and climbed back on. They were about to scold me when I kissed Vicky passionately, and then I did the same with Rhonda. "What's going on?" Vicky asked, surprised. I playfully teased, "I think I'm ready to join in the fun again. To celebrate, I'd like to share some special moments with two amazing women if they're interested." "Huh?" they replied. I chuckled. "If I could draw, I'd show you." "Oh, we get the idea. But why the change now?" "Why not? I'm not tied down and my relationship with Jen might be ending. I don't owe anyone anything. We're adults, and what we do is our own choice. If I want to share affection with two people who mean a lot to me, I think that's perfectly fine." They looked at me for a moment before breaking into smiles. "Welcome back, but for today, let's hold off on anything until you talk to Jen. If you both decide to part ways, we're in. If you two want to stay together and explore things, even better. We've been interested in Jen for a while. Annette has a crush on you too. She shared that with us one night after a few glasses of wine. She'd love to spend time with you." They both kissed me affectionately and then asked me to take them back to the marina and secure my boat. I followed them home and saw Jen's car in the garage when I arrived. She was sitting on the couch with the lights off, no TV on, just quietly waiting in the dim light. When Jen noticed me, she looked away again. I sat down next to her, just waiting for her to speak. "You were right to leave," she said softly. "Can you explain that?" I asked. "I have nothing to lose anymore, Jim. I thought we might be together for a long time. I know I loved you. No, I still love you. But if I loved you that much, how could I take something that meant a lot to you and use it to justify what I did? I never planned for anything serious to happen, but it just got out of hand. I'm glad I found the sense to stop it. It wasn't right, even if we hadn't clearly stated our feelings. It would have been unfair. I'm struggling to understand this, Jen. You say you love me, yet you were ready to be with someone else? I get that you were hurt and upset, but I felt angry with you, and I never thought of turning to someone else. My ex and my kids are part of my life forever. I could go without seeing Bonnie again, but not my kids or grandkids. They are who I am." She looked shocked and said, "I would never come between you and your family. I know how much you care about them. I was just hurt that you couldn't share your time with me and them. Just so you know, my kids like you. They understand you didn't break my marriage, and they don't hold anything against you. Bonnie, on the other hand, is upset. She believes you had a part in everything that went wrong and thinks our divorce is partly your fault." "That's not fair. This mess started with her. When you first disagreed, she should have let it go. I feel like I ended up okay, but it wasn't my fault." "I know that, and you know that, and deep down she knows it too. But Bonnie doesn't like to take the blame when things go bad. She always looks for someone to blame to feel less guilty. If she had known what would happen, she might have made different choices. Hindsight is always clearer." Jen looked at me, determination on her face. "I'm not like her. If I make a mistake, I will always tell you, no matter the cost. I know I messed up, So, do we still have a relationship? I hope we do, but being hurt and almost being with someone else doesn't really help us. What happens if I make you angry in the future? I'm older and I will make mistakes. You're not old. At least part of you isn't, she said with a laugh. And I'm not that young either, so let's drop the age stuff, okay? You're not the only one who makes mistakes. Last week showed that. Just to be clear, if I had been unfaithful, I would have left because I wouldn't have been able to face you again. You deserve better, especially after what happened with Bonnie. Here's the deal. I messed up, you reacted the way you did, and I deserved it. I really want you back, Jim. I love having you around. I knew what she was about to say, and she knew too. It felt heavy in the air, and then she started crying. I pulled her close. You're really going to use the tears? You know I can't resist that. I want to be with you. I love having you here as well. She understood me. Her tears flowed for a moment longer before she jumped up, wanting to show her feelings. If you love having me around, prove it. Show me. I'm yours forever, Jimmy. It was a strong statement, but I was a bit distracted by her. Even though I had seen her many times, she was 34 and seemed to glow with confidence. The next morning I felt older than usual. Jen got really into improving our home. She had been cautious about suggesting changes before, but now ideas were coming. She wanted a new backyard and insisted on helping. It took us 3 months to finish. We didn't have a pool, but we put in a nice hot tub that could fit 10 next to a brick patio across from the outdoor kitchen. We removed 2 old, sick trees and planted a few new ones. I smiled and joked that an optimist is someone who plants trees they might never sit under. She playfully hit me for it. You have plenty of years ahead, old man. We'll hang a swing from this tree for your great-grandchildren when they visit. You might be old then, but I'll still look good. Everyone will wonder how you got so lucky. Old Man became her nickname for me. I picked her up and spun her around, kissing her happily. Once we settled into our relationship, I wasn't surprised to come home one day and find July on the patio chatting with Jen, who held the baby. Well, she wasn't really a baby anymore. She was almost 2 years old. Jen and July had met by chance and grown close over lunch. Later, July told me she liked Jen and knew she had nothing to do with our breakup. Bonnie still disliked her, but these days it felt like Bonnie disliked everything. If she had known what was next, she would have been even angrier. When we finally finished the backyard, we invited our friends over for a gathering. Jason and Annette, Sandy and Ed, Vicky and Rhonda, and us. We let Jason use the new grill, and soon we sat down to enjoy some perfectly cooked T-bone steaks. He also grilled corn on the cob, while Jen prepared potato salad and coleslaw. It was one of the best meals we had ever tasted. As the night went on, drinks were flowing. Jen and Vicky sipped on wine, Annette and Rhonda worked on a pitcher of Long Island iced tea, and Jason and I enjoyed our favorite craft beer. Ed and Sandy had brought a 12-pack of hard cider. Eventually, they noticed our large hot tub and walked over to check it out. I removed the tarp and turned it on, enjoying the size and the rising bubbles. Why didn't you tell us? We would have brought our swimsuits. I looked at Rhonda and smiled. When has a swimsuit ever stopped you? If you want in, just go for it. Those girls were quite bold. Vicky was in her underwear almost immediately. Rhonda grinned and took off her skirt, playfully pulling her shirt over her head. She wasn't wearing a bra. Vicky laughed as she tossed hers away, and it humorously landed on my head. We all burst into laughter as cell phones came out to capture the moment. Annette smiled at Jason, and with a nod, she soon had her shirt and skirt on the patio table. She wore a very minimal piece, and every eye was on her as she stepped into the tub. Sandy and Jen exchanged looks, seemed to make a decision, and soon their clothes were neatly placed on chairs as they ran, giggling towards the hot tub. 5 attractive figures were on display, and they looked at us. Are you guys coming or what? We moved toward the tub, but they stopped us. This is an underwear-only tub. If you want in, you need to take those off. Jason just smiled and shrugged off his shorts, revealing his amusing boxers adorned with little hearts. Hey, Ned got these for me. I had no idea I'd be showing them off tonight. Ed laughed as he opted for his underwear. Everyone turned to me, and I chuckled as I decided to go without, prompting laughter from the guys and playfully surprised gasps from the girls. Soon we were all settled in, and as the evening rolled on, the girls decided that if anyone needed to go get something, it would be me. They playfully cheered and laughed whenever I stood up to leave. Did it turn into anything wild? Not really. We were just a group of friends enjoying each other's company. There was light-hearted teasing and joking, but that was about it. After some time, we all stepped out of the tub before we turned into prunes. Rhonda giggled as she removed her underwear. "I'm not putting clothes on over wet ones," she said with a laugh. Sandy lost her cool. "Did you really say drawers?" she asked, trying to catch her breath. "Yeah, drawers. What do you call them? California girl?" "I've never called them drawers, but you're right." She turned around, quickly changed into her shorts, and then it seemed like everything changed. The next morning, I walked out to find 5 pairs of panties on the table. Jen came up behind me, smiling. "We need to return these to their owners." She held up a pink pair that Annette had worn. "She is really pretty, isn't she? She has a nice figure, too." I could sense a bit of insecurity, so I wrapped my arms around her. "She does, but if you're wondering, so do you. You're just the right shape, very lovely." I wanted to make her feel good, so I lifted her playfully for a quick kiss. She giggled and kissed me back. We chatted about the night over breakfast. "Are you okay with what happened? I don't want it to bring back any bad memories." "Sweetheart, we were just having fun with friends. It wasn't planned, and there was no secret agenda. It was all in good spirits. We just looked, that's all." She smiled again. "I noticed. You guys took a lot of glances." "What can I say? We're guys. It's in our nature. Being around 5 attractive women was a bit much for us. It could be a funny title for a movie. 5 Friends in a Hot Tub coming soon." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my scrambled eggs. I leaned back, feeling happy. My 5-year-old twins were laughing as they slid off the side of the houseboat I had made for them. It swung out over the water, and when you reached the bottom, you went fast. If you picked up enough speed, you could skim over the water. They were wearing life jackets and were being watched by their mother, sister, and 2 cousins. July and her daughters, who were here with us, made it even more fun. It was amusing that 2 5-year-olds had a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old as cousins, but that's just how it worked out. Jason and Annette were next to me, watching their granddaughter zoom down the slide. Ed and Sandy's kids were also there, eager to take their turns. Vicky and Rhonda were nearby, enjoying the time with their honorary nieces. Watching them made me smile. After 25 years together, they decided to tie the knot. My Jen was on a jet ski, ready to help the kids if needed. When she caught my eye, she smiled. She still looked great in her swimsuit at 41. The kids played until they finally wore themselves out. We went back to the marina and settled in the park and playground. Jason and I cooked on the grill while the ladies relaxed, watching the kids play on the swings and slides with excitement. After we ate, July packed all the kids into her minivan for a sleepover. They fell asleep before she even left the parking lot. I hoped they would just take short naps. If they slept too long, it would be a long night for her. The older folks returned to the boat, and we set off to our favorite cove. It was a great spot for fishing, and we planned to relax, enjoy some drinks, and take it easy. Jason had become quite successful, with national artists eager to book studio time. Ed received some interesting offers and was considering starting his own business, but Jason offered him 25% of his studio. They made a deal and hired talented people, deciding to take a few days off to enjoy themselves. Annette had worked enough in the school system to retire, and she joined Jason's team. Her training helped her support artists during tough times. Sandy still ran the Love Shack, and it was doing well. We had been around long enough to serve the next generation, with kids and younger relatives of our past customers now using us. We even thought about opening a second location that Jen would manage, but then she had kids. She would say it was a surprise and try to stay serious, and didn't want to be away from them for too long. She decided to focus on being a full-time mother. We could afford it since my business continued to thrive. I retired at 50 and passed it on to my kids, who paid me 20% of the company's earnings, which kept me comfortable. I bought a house by the lake we loved and built a workshop in the backyard. To stay active, I made outdoor furniture to sell at the local farmers market, and I was surprised they let me. The organizer explained they welcomed all kinds of crafters, and that's how I fit in. I worked every other Saturday, mostly attracting customers through word of mouth. It kept me busy and happy, and oddly enough, it was quite successful. My older kids enjoyed teasing me when they found out Jen was expecting, joking that my grandkids would be older than her new babies. They liked Jen, and we visited often, especially during the summer. After fishing for an hour without any luck, we decided to call it a day. Sometimes the fish just don't bite. We cleaned up and grabbed a fresh beer before joining the ladies. They were whispering together and quickly parted when we approached. "What are you planning, girls?" Vicky smiled and held up a bottle of vegetable oil. "Not planning, just recalling." It was around that time when everyone was feeling very relaxed. Some of us had aged, but we accepted the changes with grace and style. I smiled as the guys joked around. Even now, I can't say what made us think of it. It all began as a light-hearted story. Vicky, Rhonda, and Annette were sharing memories of our younger days with Jen and Sandy during a cozy night in at Vicky and Rhonda's house, enjoying some wine. They had recently gone to a show that featured male performers and had a bit too much to drink, as Vicky liked to say. Sandy was the one who suggested it first. "You remember when we lived in California and Ed was working with those creative people? Some of them led pretty laid-back lives. One artist would only work with Ed because she felt he was the only one who understood her. Ed told us it was during one of her dramatic moments that he snapped. 'Okay,' he said, 'you can miss this session, but you'll still pay for it. You have a great voice, but in the end it's just work, like being a butcher or a tax person. If you mess up their taxes or give them the wrong cut of meat, what are the chances they'll come back to you? Keep giving me these half-hearted efforts, and soon you'll find your albums in the bargain bin. It's up to you.' She calmed down after that, and while working with Ed, she acted very professionally. Later on, she got a reputation for being difficult because she wanted the best from everyone she worked with. Over time, she became friends with us, and one evening after a few drinks, she shared that she and her husband sometimes tried new things together. They made sure everything was controlled and safe. Then she invited us over for a night in. We thought about it, but before anything could happen, her husband left her for someone else, which left us feeling uneasy. I sometimes wonder if we missed out on something." Vicky, Rhonda, and Annette exchanged knowing looks. "You did," Annette said. "We were basically young and free at that time, and that made it exciting. We already liked each other, so there was trust. I can still picture us moving from one to another, enjoying brief moments before shifting partners." Jen paused for a moment. "You know what I dislike most about that trip? I never got to have any of those experiences. My then-husband was awful, and the thought of his friends being close to me made me uncomfortable. Jimmy was the only reason I went. I regretted it even before it ended badly and we flew home. It wasn't great, honestly. One guy was a bit creepy, and another was just slimy. It's a whole different experience when you're with someone you truly care about." They moved on to other topics, but the earlier chat lingered in their minds. 4 weeks later, we all found ourselves in my hot tub. The agreed rule was that everyone would be completely comfortable. Some playful gestures had been becoming more noticeable, and Annette must have felt the moment was right. She had spoken to Jason, and Sandy had tipped off Ed. They seemed a bit uneasy around me and Jen, but Annette had just enough to drink to bring it up. "We've thought about this quite a bit. Everyone except you two is on board for a traditional gathering. It's up to you, but we'd love for you to join. It can be just this once or become a regular thing, depending on how it goes. I know Jen is curious about what might have happened if you stayed on the island. You have lovely memories with us, even if some parts are tricky. This time you can trust us. No one is going to leave or love anyone less. It will just be fun. Think it over." Then they shifted their talk to the funny things one of the artists had done while working. I weighed the idea for a few days before sitting Jen down. "Do you really want to do this?" She hesitated for a moment, but I stopped her. "Jen, please be honest with me. I'll ask again, and if I don't hear the truth, this will be the last time we talk about this. Got it?" She nodded. "Yes, I'd like to try it. Just once. You all have memories that I'm not part of, and I want my own too. But if you feel any doubt, we won't do it, and we'll forget this conversation." I appreciated her honesty. The rest of that day and part of the next, I spoke with everyone to see how they felt. They all wanted to, but were hesitant, recalling how the last attempt didn't go well. I invited them to my house the next evening and ordered pizza so we could focus. The air was thick with tension as I sat beside Jen and held her hand. I'm in, but with conditions. First, this is a one-time event. I want to create a nice memory, so it needs to stay within our group. I really don't want Bonnie and Jules to find out. It's not just about their feelings. I don't want to deal with their reactions. Lastly, I'll take charge of organizing it. If we want to relive some memories, let's call it a gathering. We'll do it at the shack when they're closed. Any questions or thoughts? They all exchanged glances, grinning and trying to speak at once. After checking their schedules, we settled on a date in 2 weeks. Jason and Ed helped me build the frame. It was 24 feet long, 10 feet wide, and 2 feet deep. The setup was meticulously designed with extra care to ensure a safe and smooth experience for everyone involved. We created a large padded area with several layers of strong, waterproof plastic lined with foam to cushion any falls. The space was covered with shrink wrap to keep everything in place, creating a large, fun slip-and-slide environment. Instead of the usual soap or water, I had ordered several gallons of massage oil online, thinking it would be safer and make things glide more smoothly. Ed and I spent the night before the event setting everything up and testing it out to make sure it would hold up. After everything looked good, we relaxed with a couple of drinks, feeling prepared. "Are you ready for this?" Ed asked with a grin. "Yeah, I think so," I replied, chuckling. "It'll be fun, and I think Jen will get a kick out of it too. I just hope I can keep up with the energy around here. I'm not exactly in my teenage years anymore." Ed laughed and, looking a bit sheepish, admitted, "Jason and I had the same thought, so we decided to get a little help from our doctors just in case. We're all set." Finally, the day arrived. We gathered around the slip-and-slide area with everyone watching as Jason and I poured the massage oil over the surface. There was a slight pause as everyone took it in, perhaps feeling a bit nervous, but the excitement quickly won out. To break the ice, I gave Jen a playful nudge, sending her sliding down the slick surface with a surprised laugh that quickly turned into pure enjoyment. Before long, everyone joined in, laughing and sliding around, each person embracing the carefree fun of the moment. The entire atmosphere was filled with laughter as we all relaxed, enjoying the playful energy of the day. It was a simple but memorable way to come together and share in a lighthearted experience that everyone could enjoy, feeling like kids again as we celebrated the moment. Ed and I had spent the night preparing the large, cushioned area for everyone, ensuring it was safe and comfortable for our playful gathering. We lined it with padding and poured on plenty of massage oil to keep things smooth and easy for everyone to slide around. Each of us felt a mix of excitement and nerves, unsure what to expect, but ready to enjoy each other's company and let loose. As everyone gathered, we began slipping and sliding across the cushioned space, laughing and cheering each other on. It became a lighthearted scene as we bumped into each other and enjoyed the carefree atmosphere. The afternoon was filled with laughter, silly antics, and a sense of togetherness that made the day memorable. After a couple of hours of play, we all sprawled out in a pile of towels, exhausted but content, sharing smiles and quiet moments. I clumsily tried to stand up, sliding around a bit before finally making it to the edge and rolling out onto the fresh towels. The rest of the group soon followed, and we helped each other dry off, chuckling at the amount of oil still clinging to us despite our best efforts. Once we'd all cleaned up as best we could, we settled around the bar with fresh towels on the stools, and I poured drinks for everyone. We were quiet for a moment, each of us reflecting on the day, when I raised my glass with a smile. To the memories. They all grinned, lifting their glasses and echoing, "To the memories." We laughed, sharing stories from the day, making light of funny moments and mishaps. The joy in the room was undeniable. When it was time to go, we all promised to return the next day to clean up the area. Each person left with a smile, knowing we'd shared an experience to remember. Later that evening, Jen and I returned home, still feeling the warmth of the day. We showered together, the quiet of the moment allowing us to reflect. I could sense she had something on her mind, and after a moment she asked softly, "Do you still care for me?" I held her close and smiled. "More than ever," I said, reassuring her with a gentle hug. She looked relieved, and we shared a warm embrace, happy and content after a day of laughter and connection. I held her close until I couldn't anymore. Then she turned and leaned over. I felt like she wanted to reassure us that we would still be together. We both reached a moment of happiness together, which doesn't happen often. Then we cleaned up and went to bed. I think we both fell asleep almost immediately. I woke up in the morning feeling uncomfortable with her close to me. She shifted and let out a sound. "Not today, honey. I'm a little sore." "Me too. Last night felt intense." "No more of those for me," I joked. She giggled softly and then asked quietly, "Are we okay?" I kissed her neck gently. "We're fine, honey, unless you want to go again." "Not in this lifetime. Once was enough. How about you?" "I'm happy with what I have right here, so no, never again." We cuddled for a while until there was a knock at the door. I checked the security monitor and saw our friends waiting outside. I kissed Jen's neck and went to answer the door, forgetting I wasn't dressed. Vicky raised an eyebrow. "Casual Tuesday?" I looked down and smiled. "More like Forgetful Tuesday. What's up?" "We brought breakfast for you. After you eat, we'll help you clean up. Sandy has an event on Thursday and we need everything to be perfect." I smiled back. "We can never go there again without smiling at the floor." Jason agreed. "Good memories make you happy." That set a cheerful mood for the day. We joked around as we cleaned. It took hours, but we turned our place back to normal. Ed and Sandy went home to their kids while the rest of us stayed and made a late lunch. Vicky kept glancing at the hot tub. Finally, she stood up and decided she needed to soak. "Anyone else feeling sore?" Soon, we were all in the tub, relaxing as the jets worked their magic. After an hour, we dressed, shared hugs, and said our goodbyes. I thought it might feel strange afterward, but we returned to our everyday lives. Occasionally, we'd catch each other's eye and laugh, but that was it. 4 months later, I found Jen crying on the couch, surrounded by our friends. I worried someone might have passed away. "What's happening?" They left us alone on the deck. I sat beside her and hugged her tightly. "Are you okay?" "No. Yes. Maybe. I have something to tell you that you may not like." My mind raced with thoughts of her leaving me. I was tightening up when she blurted out, "I'm going to have a baby." "What?" "I said I'm having a child. Your child. What do you want to do?" I never imagined I'd be a parent at this point in my life, I thought quickly. I had seen Jen look longingly at Sandy and July's kids, and that thought made me smile. "First, we need to get married. We should find you a good doctor. I want what's best for our baby. Oh, and we might need to move soon. This small place is fine for us, but I want a bigger house with a nice yard, maybe a swing set and a pool. Are you okay with that? I don't want to sound unromantic. You know I care about you, and I'll get the ring as soon as I can. I'm just being practical. Are you with me?" She started crying more, but I could tell it wasn't just sadness. The others were looking in from the patio, and seeing her like that made them rush back in, smiling and wiping their own tears. "Leave everything to us. You'll be married at the shack. It'll be the best wedding ever," Sandy said, beaming. "We have everything covered like flowers and napkins," Rhonda added. I was happy they owned a florist shop and managed events. Sandy always picked them for weddings at the Love Shack. I leaned back and enjoyed the happiness on Jen's face. I stood up, and they all turned to look at me. "Excuse me, ladies, but I need to find a ring. Then I'll talk to Jason and Ed about matching tuxes." As I left, they joked about not being stingy. Once the planning was done, I chose Jason as best man, with Ed and Vicky as groomsmen. Rhonda was a bridesmaid, and she and Vicky looked amazing together in the pictures. That was also the night Vicky finally asked Rhonda to marry her. I didn't keep the wedding a secret, but I didn't make a big deal out of it either. All my kids came, and July's daughter was the flower girl, while my youngest grandson was the ring bearer. I didn't invite Bonnie because, honestly, I didn't want her there. This was Jen's special day, and I didn't want the past to overshadow it. July told me Bonnie didn't take the news well. She disappeared for 3 days and looked awful when she returned. July also mentioned how Bonnie freaked out when she heard about the twins. I didn't understand why. It had been years, and I had moved on. Bonnie remarried about a year later to a quiet man, but July said she seemed to be the one in charge. They still went to parties, but it sounded like there were problems since both came back with marks on them. It worried me. I took a deep breath and decided to call her. Bonnie was surprised to hear from me. I hadn't talked to her in about a year and a half because I didn't see the need. After she said hello, she quickly turned rude. "Do you have time to talk? Aren't you busy with twins? Is she cheating on you?" "Not that I know of," I replied with a grin. "You'll let me know if she shows up at one of your parties, right? How are they going? Don't you think you're getting a bit old for that?" I noticed her quick intake of breath, so I spoke before she could respond. "The reason I'm calling is that July mentioned you're getting into some unusual situations. She said you come back with marks on your skin. It's not my business, but you should reconsider what you're doing. The kids are uneasy about having the grandbabies around you. Susie even asked July if you'd been in trouble because of the way you looked. That's all I wanted to say. I also think you deserve happiness, and I don't believe you're happy right now. Face your issues, Bonnie, before you lose the people who matter to you." I thought I heard her crying when I hung up. A couple of months later, July told me that Bonnie and her new husband had separated, and 6 months after that, she was officially divorced. Since we were still in business together, I had Jen sign a prenup and insisted her new husband do the same. I heard there was some argument about it, but he eventually agreed. When the divorce started, he tried to back out, but it didn't go anywhere thanks to her lawyer. When the twins were 6, Bonnie married again. Her new husband was a few years older and a straightforward man. I liked him right away. He asked about our history, so I told him we had been married for over 20, mostly happy years until our paths changed. He just nodded. "She said you were too nice to tell the truth. She shared everything with me while you divorced and her life afterward. She says she's been out of that life for 3 years and is open to signing a prenup that protects both of you if things go wrong. I'm willing to take a chance on her. It seems you found a good place." We sat at my kitchen table, and he watched Jen and the kids playing in the yard. I smiled. I got lucky, or so she tells me daily. I think there's something to it. If you love her, marry her. Just be cautious. Before all this, she was a wonderful wife. I wish you both the best. 6 months later, July filled us in on the wedding details. Thankfully, her youngest was able to be the flower girl, and one of his grandsons could be the ring bearer. She said it was a simple and beautiful ceremony, and they both emphasized their commitment to one another. Jen smiled, happy that her mother had found joy, then returned to planning for Vicky and Rhonda's wedding. I was the best man, and Jen was the matron of honor. Vicky looked sharp in her tux, and Rhonda wore a lovely gown. The ceremony was beautiful, and there were no dry eyes in the room after they exchanged vows. Later at the reception, I danced with Vicky in the same spot where we had shared our memories. I leaned down and whispered to her, "I can still smell the lotion." She burst into laughter and hugged me tighter. A few months later, Annette asked me why I agreed to the Mazzola party. I did it for Jen. She often felt left out when we reminisced about the past. I thought this would help her feel included like the rest of us. Sharing memories can really bring people closer. I sighed. I also agreed because of Bonnie. She was in a similar situation to Jen, but handled it poorly. If it had only been you guys, I could have managed and probably enjoyed myself like I did with Jen. Instead, Bonnie schemed behind my back, arranging something without my input. There was no respect in it. It just happened. Do you ever think about doing it again? With you all? No. Ed and Sandy have stayed with us occasionally, but it was all casual, just friends enjoying each other's company. I once asked Jen at a girls' night out if she would consider doing it again, and she quickly said no. I can imagine her response. I have a great partner and wonderful kids. It was fun, but I can't see myself doing it again. Honestly, just thinking about being with someone else makes me uneasy now. It was enjoyable at the time, but it's not something I want to repeat. Then she smiled. Sometimes we have fun dancing together on our nights out. I bet there were times when she came home all flustered and had a lively evening. I leaned in and kissed her. For some reason, she turned red before thanking me and promising to keep it up. We still have our hot tub nights, but not as often as before. We live farther apart now, and everyone has jobs and other responsibilities, so we don't see them as much as we'd like. We do have our private hot tub nights once in a while and still have fun like we did when we were younger. Life is good. Hey, everyone! Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the exciting stories we have coming up. What do you think about the characters in this story? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.